Thank you, Brian. Good evening. I'd like to welcome everyone to tonight's school board meeting. Would you all please join me for the Pledge of Allegiance? Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. So tonight, is Joel online with us?
Yes,
Okay.
at least he was.
So Mary is in attendance, Tim, myself, Josh, and Joel Shagnon is attending from home. Next on our agenda is meeting minutes. We have public participation. Do we have any public participation? I see we have at least one resident. I'd like to come up to the mic and...
Here.
Sure.
No, this one here, so people have...
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
This catches feet, well, actually, they both catch for you too, but.
I'll make sure to push a lot of buttons here. Hi, good evening. Gabe Turan, 311. I'm here tonight just to throw my 2 cents in on a topic I think you may be discussing later, and that is the number of fans able to attend baseball and softball games for the spring. This district has been in the forefront of the state from the very beginning with holding in-person learning for students and teachers, and I've applauded that fact at every opportunity. Last year, while COVID was still fresh and there was so much unknown, every graduating student was able to have 6 people attend. While most of the state was doing drive-by or virtual graduations, this district took the reins and said, we're having an in-person graduation. Fall soccer was our first sporting event amidst COVID, and we added 2 spectator limit. I get it. It was a feeling out process, and we were venturing into uncharted waters. Then we moved into basketball and volleyball seasons. Since it was taking place in an indoor setting, I could somewhat see the reason for the 2 spectator limit. Now we move into baseball and softball seasons at outdoor venues, with plenty of open areas down left field, right field, and across the center field fence. It's a fact that many schools are opening up to all home spectators who wish to attend, and are also allowing away spectators. That being said, Farmington is not having any away spectators, but nonetheless, we are still being held to a 2 spectator limit. I'd say that if we aren't going to allow visiting team spectators, we should be allowing more of our own. All schools across the state are opening up now. Businesses and restaurants are opening up more, and people are getting vaccinated. Those vaccinated include our educators, our students, and us parents, yet we are still holding on to this 2 spectator limit. A few weeks ago, the junior class held its penny sale in the gymnasium. I believe the number set forth to be safe for that indoor event was 50. Yet we're holding our baseball and softball spectators to less than that at an outdoor setting. My 11-year-old goes to Henry Wilson every day and participates in recess with kids from 10 to 15 other households. But for some reason, him being a third person at a baseball game would somehow be the tipping point for COVID? Why is it that a family of 5 who live under the same roof day in and day out send 2 kids to different Farmington schools every day is deemed unsafe to attend a baseball game, yet we were able to attend a penny sale indoors? I urge you to take the same innovative thinking that had us as a leader in the state for in-person learning and apply that approach to our sporting events now. I don't know if you guys looked at the baseball field when you drove in. There was a junior high game going on with lots of open area. Whether there were, I think, only a handful of parents that were there watching it, but just a quick scan with your own eyes, you could tell that it would house a whole lot more than, say, 20 people. There's, I think, 10 or 11 baseball players. So at a 2-person limit, I think 20 would maybe fill up part of a first baseline, and that's about it. Schools all over are opening for away and home fans. Epping, I know, is fully open. Winnicott's fully open. Newt is fully open. Newmarket is fully open for home fans, but they're not doing away fans. But there's no limit on home fans. I just hope you guys rethink your earlier decision on the 2 fan limit. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. Anyone else here in public? Before I go to people who are remotely logged in? Jen is running it. Jen, do we have anybody that would like to speak?
Not at this time. I put into the chat to indicate and let me know. I do not see that anyone has. However, if someone online would like to unmute themselves, this is the time, if you'd like to share something with the board. Nope, it does not appear so.
Okay, thank you, Jen. Yes, we did also, Gabe, we did receive a couple emails from other parents expressing the similar concern. I think the board may discuss that under new business. I'm in favor of discussing it because times have changed and that policy was set back when our vaccination rate wasn't where it is today.
Right.
And it is also an outdoor sport, so. But so it may be brought up under new business. It wasn't set on our agenda, but
Okay.
we may be talking about it, so
Very
stay
good.
tuned.
Yep, appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next on our agenda is minutes. We have meeting minutes of March 15th, public session.
Just got one amendment on the March 15th public session. It indicates Mr. King was absent. Can we change that to absent excused?
It's the 22nd.
We're on the 15th.
All right, I'm sorry. There was one of them. So I guess I'll say the same amendment on the 22nd, and then I'll go through and make a motion to approve in bulk.
I'll second that.
And a second. Discussion. Now, what about we got? Tim, is your motion encompassing all the non-publics?
I will be once we decide on the amendment.
Okay. So discussion will be on amendment to revise the minutes of March 22nd to show me absent/excuse.
And that's the public minutes.
Yep.
correct?
Right, public. Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
All abstain. Motion passes. Now that minutes are amended, Tim, your motion was to approve them all.
Yeah, for the record, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of March 15th, 2021 public session, as well as non-public session 1, non-public session 2 of the same date, then the public minutes of March 22nd, along with non-public session 1, 2, 3, and 4.
Second.
Seconded by Joel. Any discussion? Not hearing any discussion. All those in favor?
Aye.
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 A motion to approve on the 15th and abstain on the 22nd. So motion passes. Next, if the board would extend me the pleasure, I'd like to move the agenda to allow new business to come first. We do have a presentation tonight by CAP for their summer program.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
So at this point, we'll have a presentation by CAP on their summer programming proposal.
All right. Good evening. Thank you guys so much for having me here today. I appreciate you guys giving me a couple moments to present our agency's proposal for summer programming. My name is Jessica Dubois. I am the Farmington Children's Center Director. I've been with the agency a little over 3 years now. We did run a summer program last year over at Valley View, and we had a very small turnout, but we figured it would be the first year. This year, we're really hoping to extend to more families, including the learning program that you guys will be running for a small portion of the summer. We would like to do wraparound care for any children that need care longer than the 1 o'clock dismissal. We currently have the dates available to us through July 6th through the August 6th date. We are open to extend those dates if you'll have us. We understand that there are situations in facilities that might not allow that kind of opening, but 6:30 a.m. to 5:30 p.m. will be our operating hours. We have our rates and our schedules planned. They are very similar to last year's. Our regular hours right now are from 8 a.m. to 4 p.m. This allows people to have a normal work day with extended care from 6:30 to 8, and then aftercare from 4 to 5:30. We've also changed the rates for the wraparound care for children who are getting summer learning opportunity through the school district. So that way it's 60 a week, I'm so sorry. What I will say is we are a licensed program through the state of New Hampshire child licensing. So this allows us the opportunity to work with the state of New Hampshire to allow for state assistance for anybody who qualifies. And we can actually help parents with this process. It's relatively easy once we sit down with the parents and help them with the paperwork. It is a $25 registration fee, and upon enrollment, we do expect the first week's tuition. We do work with families that might have difficulties with this, so we will work out plans accordingly. Nope, it's stuck. Okay.
And I just want to put that, when you're talking about last year, it was actually the year before because.
Oh, that's right. I'm so sorry.
Last year was the missing year.
Yes, thank you. We kind of went, leaping ahead. Sorry about that. Packets will be available for parents to pick up at the schools, or with the children, it can go home in their book bags. We also have them available at our centers, and we can send them to parents electronically if it's necessary. We will expect them to have it returned to us at a certain date as posted above, so that way we can have time to process it for the July 6th start date. I put our contacts on there. We will send all of that out with the paperwork. We can put a flyer out for parents and families so that they have the information available to them. Our program offers many things that are required by the state, but also something that we really value is qualified childcare. All of our staff, no matter what age they are, even high school students that are 16 and older, have to be first aid and CPR certified. It is a qualification that we have to have through the state of New Hampshire. We also have a water safety certification that they must take. We provide all this training ahead of time to our staff. There's a site director who has to have the right education and qualifications in order to be at the center to oversee all functioning of the programs. That's a very important thing for the state of New Hampshire Licensing Bureau. We also have a ratio that we have to consider when we're enrolling our students. It's a 1 to 15 or a 45 maximum capacity. Obviously, that being said, with all of the, and we'll jump ahead to that after, but with all of the protocol with COVID, we obviously understand that there are different, protocols we have to put in place so we can secure their safety and health. We do a lot of activities with them. We do have themed weeks, but we provide a lot of other enriching activities, including helping them if they are in the summer program through the school with their work. We do really like to work with the schools and the teachers to ensure that they're getting all of the assistance that they're maybe running out of time to do themselves as students. So we will sit down with them and do their work with them if they have questions or need assistance. We like to get them outside to play as much as possible. It is extremely important to us that they have that opportunity to stretch their legs and get a lot of that gross motor in. But we do have free choice enrichment areas, and a lot of that is STEAM activities. So we do a lot of science, we do a lot of math and art. So that is something that we do consider quality. We do have different policies in place for COVID right now. Obviously, we would really like to align this with what the school has going on, so that way we can keep it pretty universal all the way through, and the kids do not get confused. They don't have any questions about what their expectations are. So I would definitely be working with the school district to ensure that our protocol aligns with the school. We take the cleaning of our areas extremely important to our children, to our staff. That is something we would also work with the schools with. We want to make sure we're using the same cleaning chemicals that you guys are using, so that way we're keeping everything as consistent as possible. All protocol that you guys have in place within the schools, we would follow through with in our program while they're indoors and outdoors. But we do have our own sickness policy that we would go ahead and give you guys. It's state licensed, but it's also through the CDC and the state of New Hampshire. All of the staff have PPE available to them, so we make sure that this is always available to them. Oh, my bad, jumping ahead. Some of the other things that we do present, since we are a part of Community Action Partnership, is that we do have summer meal programs. So the children will have lunches and breakfasts served. at no extra cost to the families. That is something that's provided. It's delivered to us every day. The nice part about it is that the children that are coming from the summer program from the schools can easily transition to our program without having to be transported. They can come right from their classes into our program. We do have a screening process, as you saw on the last slide. So, obviously we would check with the teachers to see that they already passed the screening for the day. We also have the availability to help and assist with any transitions or any of the schoolwork that the kids might have. And at this point, I guess I would ask if there's any questions. I did send a flyer out to Ruth Ellen earlier, and I think that's also in your folders. So,
And there was an update that was done this afternoon. So if you looked at it earlier in the weekend, the prices are reduced from what you saw first.
I did bargain a little bit. I want to make it as affordable to our families as possible.
Now, Ruth Ellen, how do you see this dovetailing into our summer program as far as where it's going to be held or proposed to be held, the transportation, if there's going to be any?
So what we're looking at for our programming, because of the work that's being done at Henry Wilson, we will have our summer programs happening here and at Valley View. For Henry Wilson programs, those will be on the first floor here. High school programs will be on the second floor. We would look at having CAP, anything that they're doing for grades 4 through 8, working out of the cafeteria and using this quad area here. Up at Valley View, they would have access to the multipurpose room and then the outside areas as well. As far as being able to use the spaces together, we've done it in the past when we've run summer programming. I don't see that it's going to be a big competition for spaces. We will have designated spaces outside that will be for classroom spaces for us for summer school. There will be designated spaces outside that would be for CAP programming for during the time that we would have instructional programming going on from 8 to 1. And then our students, if parents needed aftercare, could transition. One of the things that we have heard from parents in the past is that if my kid goes to summer school, what do I do with him for the rest of the day? I can't leave work to come get him, and then we will be having transportation for students in the morning, pick up, and then in the afternoon when they're going home from us if they're leaving at 1. But if parents aren't able to take advantage of that piece, they need kids to stay through CAP, they can stay here until as late as 5:30. We're not looking to run a bus for CAP, but we would be running a bus at 1 o'clock for students who weren't staying for CAP.
So in this proposal, CAP will be providing their program here.
They would be using space in our buildings.
So all of the activities that you're presenting will be on campus.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay. So, and we've done this, how long ago did we do this?
We did not do last year, we did the year prior,
Now,
in 2019.
on the summer program, what are your age groups? What's like the youngest age to the oldest age that people could enroll their children in?
We take children that have left kindergarten, so we don't take new students in because at this point they would probably be in our preschool program.
Okay.
So we take students that are already enrolled in the schools all the way through 8th grade.
Okay. Anyone else with any questions?
How many students did you have in 2018?
In 2019, we had approximately 15. It was a smaller group. The rec program actually had a pretty large group that year, and so it was our first year starting up, and I figured it would be a little bit quiet.
Thank you.
Tim?
Just for planning purposes, can we get a survey out to the, I'm in favor of starting the program regardless, but I think getting the word out to parents through the survey of saying, hey, this is our plan for summer school. We're going to have an after-school care for K through 8. How many would take advantage of it? And even put the prices out with, the stipulations on the people that qualify for the state aid.
No, certainly, but we didn't want to put things
No,
out until
I
we
know.
had
Yep,
blessing of board to do so.
And you think your availability is how many attendees? 45?
So we can have up to 45 according to licensing max capacity at one site. Each site can have up to 45.
We're not necessarily looking to
Oh.
put 45 kids in the cafeteria
No.
when it's raining.
Right.
Just saying.
Yeah, with protocol, obviously, as it is right now, we would never have a group size that large. We would reduce it probably down to 20, 25.
That's per facility?
Yes.
Okay.
Potentially.
Yeah. Mary, any questions?
No, I was just thinking that when we send that information out, we probably want to add the early and late availabilities as well.
Yeah, I would take the
Oh, okay.
brochure and with it.
So in the one that was sent to us, on the top it says fee rates, and in her presentation it said weekly fee rates, so
These are weekly rates.
I know that, but it may want to list that here,
Yes.
because it didn't stipulate
Correct.
whether it's weekly, daily, monthly. It did in her slide. I did notice that.
Someone might think that the 120 covers July through August.
Correct.
knows?
Yeah, the full month.
That was the only thing that I noticed in the information that wasn't 100% clear, except for her adding the age groups, which is K through 8.
I can certainly add that in the flyer. The other thing I would like to share with you is that a lot of our families that have older children in the schools have been inquiring about it, and I said it was pending at this point. So we do have a small audience of people who are already interested in care.
Okay.
And
Good.
these dates actually start a week before summer school and would extend a week after summer program, our in-house summer programming as well.
So these dates of operation, which is July 6th to August 6th, you're saying our summer program?
The school programming would go from July 12th through July 30.
Okay, so what's going to happen in that week as far as the attending students, the difference at the first and second week? They're still going to be here on site 100% of the time?
There will be an administrator on site when CAPA's here. There will be administrators on campus. We're kind of doing the, who gets to be where. But as far as our summer instructional programming running, that would be July 12th through the 30th. We're looking at those parents who are needing childcare typically need more than just that chunk. So we're looking to extend it a little bit.
But the first and the last week, CAP will have to be supplying additional resources.
CAP would be running
Here.
whatever CAP is running, because they will have students who attend all day as well, because they will have some students that don't necessarily qualify for instructional resources from us, but need the childcare through CAP. So they're still running programming that will start early morning, and they will have kids with them in the morning. We'll have some with us, and they are able to then seamlessly take hours at 1 o'clock with the transition, if parents need that to happen.
So
Okay. Tim?
the COVID cleaning for the areas used by CAP, is that going to be CAP's responsibility, or are we putting that on our people?
I think there needs to be a combination of, because I want to make sure that we have things that are going to meet Larry's standards, but I'm also not looking at, Larry, you're coming in and cleaning up after them.
Now, if we're going to have our staff assisting or doing a portion of that, this is going to be over and above their current duties and they're going to be compensated? Or is this going to be encompassed in their current work?
I think we're going to have to look at it closely. If they're here from 6:30 to 5:30, typically they're here, 7 to 3 during the summer? So they're going to be on either end here. So we're going to have to figure something out with CAP, what that's going to look like.
Okay. I'll make a motion to approve the program as presented.
Second.
Any discussion?
As we get the program up and running, and I don't know what the town's intention is on their rec program that's shut down right now, if CAP has the capability to extend this from August to the first of the year, I'd like to see that happen. Then I'd also like to see a conversation on, once we do reopen in September, are we going back to before and after school care as an option to the parents? If we are, I'd like to get that word out to parents as soon as possible.
I would certainly be in favor of that. I think it's a need that exists. For us to continue August straight through the beginning of the school year, we are going to have to be doing some intensive cleaning and some other things in the areas that CAP would be in, which was part of the reason why we cut it off when we did. I can thumb Russell Larry for dates, but I'm guessing he's going to win. So we'll see how that goes.
He usually does.
Yeah.
Okay.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you very much for your
Thank you for
time.
coming and presenting. Moving on to our agenda, does the board want to continue with new business or want to go back to old business?
Back to old business.
Okay, so going back to old business, we have, first thing on the old business is substitute handbook. And let's see if I can find it. I had it. Okay, so we had looked at this, I think the last meeting, and
There were some changes that were asked for, those were made.
okay, so maybe if you want to start, Ruth Ellen, on those.
Well, the changes that were made were those specifically requested at the last meeting.
Right, I know we had, one thing that I know we had discussion on was the salary potentially going by the hour instead of per day, and I see it's still reflected here as per day. And we're currently on a 7.5 hour day, is that correct?
Yes.
Okay. So I guess for my, because we're also looking at some of that in our other discussions about considering changing that rate and looking at other towns. Why wouldn't we want to change it to by the hour rate? I guess is the question.
Certainly, I guess it could go by the hour. We don't have really any classes that are going to run an hour long. And so, you know, because of the schedule, the way that
Right.
it runs. So if someone were to come in and cover 2 classes, it's not going to be neat. We're going to have strange portions of the hour. That's fine.
Now, how is it handled now? If somebody comes and substitutes for 2 classes,
usually-
it's not a full day, how does they get?
It's usually done by the half day at this point, so they come for a half, either the morning or the afternoon. If it's a teacher or a parent who's taking a portion of the day, that's spelled out what the remuneration is in their contract by whether it's a block class at the high school or a 50-minute class, that's broken out. This is what you get per class.
If they currently work here as a para or teacher.
Right.
But if somebody
There's
was.
nothing that says we couldn't
Yeah.
do it that way. If you look here, area schools do not pay by the hour. So they're per diem rates.
Discussion?
I do.
Go ahead.
What's minimum wage right now?
775.
It was a 750, 775? It went up from 715?
Yeah.
I haven't,
I would have to go back.
I just have a problem having a non-salaried person on a daily rate when labor law requires anybody that's non-salary to be paid an hourly rate.
yeah,
Wage and hour division isn't something that I want to play games with.
Yep, and I understand that.
And we used to do this with our paras. Department of Labor came in and changed it, if I understand that
It
now
must
all
have
your
been quite a
longe-
while ago, because it hasn't been a set
Well,
rate.
well, what did we do with our longevity and all the stuff with our parents? Didn't we add an hourly differential to that?
The longevity became an hourly differential so that if there was overtime, it would be paid that way as well on the overtime.
So if we
That's
have,
why it was changed.
so if we have a disaster that the building, we have substitutes in the building, we go into a lockdown, we're locked down till 7 at night, how do we pay these people? $75? Because it's a day? So those are some of the things I'm looking at. I just prefer an hourly wage.
Yeah. I would agree, and I think we need to have a minimum, whether it's a 2-hour minimum, or typically that's
Well,
what
we
it
have
is.
to have a 2-hour minimum by labor law anyway,
Right.
if you do it that way.
So I believe that's, yeah, so it's the 2-hour minimum plus an hourly rate. I mean, if we're gonna need something in between there, because, like I said, if we need this person for additional time, then they should be compensated for it. Whether it's early start for a special event, or because it's not per contract, where, like a teacher has, we have expectations for them to be here past, say 3 o'clock, based upon the need. Substitute teachers, really, we don't have that contractual requirement. So I'd also like to see it by the hour. I think the rate, we need to move the rate up to be more attractive and more competitive. And I think the rest of the stuff for me is fine as far as the policy. I believe this is what we've been, our substitutes have been adhering to, or this is new?
This is a new document, but it's not different from information that has been given out.
So this has been the work expectations.
This has been
Right.
the work expectations.
I stand corrected, it's 725, not 75.
Okay. So I'd like to move the discussion to the rates, which we had gotten some additional information in a folder on it that was provided to us. See if I can find it. So that was under job wages. So if we look at the area, the information that's provided to us in a folder under wages. Well, sorry. It doesn't look like our rates are that far off, but we're in need of substitute teachers. Should we consider moving it up to Stratford is 100 a day for certified, non-certified. Sanford, Maine is 100 a day. Berwick is 95. Durham is 80. Chichester is 100. Wolfboro is 100. Some of the other communities I'm surprised by being as low as they are, such as Somersworth, Epping.
Alton.
Alton's tiny.
What?
Alton's 65.
Yeah.
If we're going to do hourly, I would propose, as the tiers sit now, $12, $13, and $14 respectively. That leaves the daily rate to currently NH certified to approximately $105 a day. Four-year degree would be 97.5 a day. And non-certified would be 90 a day.
At the 7.5 hours.
Right.
For a normal day. If it wouldn't be on that, obviously it would be more.
Right. Our current rate is 70.
75, 80, and 85.
Now, if we had a teacher that was filling in for a sub, what would that compensation be?
They are paid at the certified sub rate. So right now, if a teacher is filling in during a prep period for another teacher, they would get that $85 a day broken out to an hourly rate times the amount of time they're in the classroom.
Okay, so our teachers, when subbing, would get the current New Hampshire certified rate
Yes,
per the contract.
correct.
And what was the three rates that you had suggested?
$12 an hour, $13 an hour, $14 an hour. That would bring up NH certified to 102.50, right above some area towns.
Actually, NH certified at 14 an hour would be 105.
Right.
Discussion?
Yes.
Go ahead.
Guess my question is, what was your top end for certified? Was it 14?
14.
So if we had a retired teacher that wanted to come in and substitute teach the past time, we're going to pay them $14 an hour to kind of be in our building. Do we see with some of our retirement pool, do we see an advantage of upping that up closer to a teacher pay to get retired people into the building?
They can't come back for, is it 60 days?
I think it's 30.
35. If they're coming in as a long-term sub, so
Yeah.
they would be stepping in to take over for an extended period of time, they're paid at the base per diem rate of a step 1 teacher or a step 0 teacher. If you have someone who's coming in just to cover a class here or a class there, it's certainly something to consider. We've had a few come back and sub. We've had a few come back and say, look, I'm going to be a para. I don't want to do lesson plans, but I want to be with the kids.
I guess my vision is, are we seeing retired teachers just go away because they're done with it, or is there something that can be attractive to say, hey, you're going to get your pension, but you could work 1 or 2 days at this rate in the district and help us out with substitute, and they're not similar to the paras. They're not going to have to do lesson plans because they're already done for them. They're experienced teachers, hopefully in their subject matter they could grasp. Maybe we make a one more level that says retired teacher and put similar to what we do with the long-term subs. I
So
mean,
retired teacher from this district or just any retired teacher?
I'd say any retired teacher. I mean, if you're retiring as a teacher, you've got 30 years experience as an educator, and we're not bringing them into the building now, and maybe by doing that, you're giving somebody a part-time job in a career that they loved and did for 30 years. I just think we're missing an opportunity by not going after that segment of population.
What's the current daily rate for that last tier certified sub for long-term absence?
For long-term sub? My computer went to sleep. Do you have the CBA in front of you?
So while he's looking up that, I believe, Josh, I think we ought to move it up at least another $1 per hour in each category. That would be bringing a certified New Hampshire teacher to $15 per hour, which in private sector is, for somebody with that skill level, I think it's going to be very competitive, and we have a need that we're not fulfilling, and I would be in favor of that.
I would agree. I saw a sign walking into Walmart today, and they're offering $17.75 an hour.
With that, the only caveat that I will put out there is that it's not what we have budgeted, so we will need to watch that line closely. Doesn't mean it's not a good idea.
Right.
It's just not what we have budgeted.
But we're not spending it now because we can't get bodies in. So if we can get half those bodies in, we're still under budget. But I get what I appreciate what you're saying.
I like Tim's idea a lot. I think that having retired teachers here might up the quality a little bit, so that the folks we are attracting are people who have the experience in the classroom.
Because right now, we are, what are we, depending on who we have subbing in the classroom, we could be missing some educational opportunities.
Right.
And having certified or higher skill level as substitutes, I think is going to give us some benefits that we need. I don't know how the best way to structure Tim's thoughts.
Well, I mean, depending on the daily rate for the bargaining agreement, that may be the appropriate rate. It might be lower.
But how are you going to delineate between the current New Hampshire certified teacher and a retired teacher? Because you could have a currently New Hampshire certified teacher with 25 years of experience subbing.
They're still working?
Do you want this year's or next year's for long-term sub?
Look at next year's.
Yeah.
Next year's, okay. So that divided by 125.
But-
No, that can't be right. It's not. Oh, no,
use
it's
it.
per hour.
38,657
So
is,
it's $27.50 an hour.
So then we would go from 13, 14, 15 to $27 an hour per long-term
Except-
sub.
But for a long-term sub, they are coming in, they are doing the lesson plans.
Right.
They are doing the grading. So there is a greater difference in commitment and in expectation as well. Considerable.
Right, but it's a considerable jump in pay. That's for long-term sub.
That's for long.
Which would be, for what's the minimum time period would qualify for? 1 semester?
Typically, it's at least 6 weeks. It would be for maternity leave, a long-term disability. Sometimes it's as long as a semester, sometimes it's not.
But we must define somewhere by policy what the minimum is, or we don't?
We've had,
As far as an employee, I'm not talking about the extended period of times, whether it's 4 months, 5 months.
Right.
But what is the minimum by policy where we're going to say, it's not a day sub, we need this for a 6-week period, and that constitutes this $27 an hour rate?
when we know for, say, maternity leave, we know ahead. So those are advertised and are put out as, this is a long-term substitute. If we have a shorter-term substitute position that becomes a long-term sub because of the circumstances, then at 4 weeks, we typically say, okay, we're going to look at moving this over and going from there.
So if it's 4 weeks or less, we're doing it with day-by-day sub rates?
That's what it has been in the past.
what if we're paying 27 for a long-term sub, what about just taking the certified teacher position, which can be retired or currently certified, putting that at $22 an hour for the next school year and see what we get in our buildings for teaching staff? It's not a bad part-time job for somebody that's got their bachelor's degree and above and enjoys teaching. You might have a teacher that left teaching because they had a child and want to work part-time, and that might be a good opportunity to get educators in our classroom versus potentially a babysitter.
So you're looking at it as a certified or retired rate?
Yep. And we can leave it at the certified because,
Well, not all retirees have kept their certification.
okay, and they don't have to be certified, correct?
That's what I'm asking you. So they don't have to be certified
By
to
DOE?
substitute. No, they
Okay,
don't.
then certified/retired.
So is it possible that somebody could retire and not be able to be recertified?
Yes.
Under what circumstances?
There are circumstances where a license is surrendered, but not necessarily revoked, and they are unable to recertify and are no longer teaching.
But you wouldn't hire those, correct?
No, I'm going to check the list.
Yeah.
So there's a way to review that.
I get a list from the DOE, and I can make a phone call and double check it. Yes, I can.
So we could prevent ourselves from hiring somebody that could not be certified.
I'd be comfortable with 20 rather than 22.
That's still a pretty significant jump in that. That would put us, I think, potentially in budget issue from what we've already budgeted. Because we're budgeting at $85 a day, and you're talking to go to double?
How many retired teachers or certified teachers do we have substituting?
Currently, the certified teachers I have substituting are the teachers who are covering during their prep periods.
And is that working for what we need for subs?
While it does give them at least some compensation, I know that the majority of them would much rather have the time. They have been more than willing to pitch in to help. I'm glad at least we now have the wherewithal through the CBA to at least say, your time is worth something. Is it enough? No. And are they strapped for time? You betcha. They really are. That 50 to 80 minutes a day is huge. I mean, it's 50 minutes a day, and then the other part is PLC time for those that have a longer prep, and they miss that as well if they're doing full coverage for somebody else.
Now, what is the current makeup of our substitute workforce? Is it people who just have are non-certified with a high school diploma, or they're holding a 4-year college degree, or they're currently
I
certified?
have a little bit of everything. Most, I would say, have at least a 2-year degree. I've got a couple of college students who are education majors who have been subbing for us. I've got some folks who are in who have 2 and 4-year degrees both. Unfortunately, it seems oftentimes when I get a really good substitute, we either hire them for another position, or they find other employment. This is kind of that stop in between as they're looking for something else. Right now I have probably a rotation of 5 to 6 people who are consistently available a few days a week. I have a few people that I have kept extremely busy.
And of those 5 or 6, where do those fall?
I've got some of each.
Okay.
So, yeah.
So if we were to move up, let's say at the lowest level, the non-certified to $14 an hour, that would be $105. If you move up the next tier, which is holding a 4-year degree, I'd be certainly comfortable going 15 or more, a little bit more than the Hampshire certified. Because say if you went 17.5 on the Hampshire certified, and on a 40-hour work week,
So for certified, that would be
I'm just putting out for the
$131.25 a day.
100.
$131.25 a day.
And if you prorated that over a school year, what would that be for a salary?
Times 25, 24,281. 24,000.
Okay. So I guess I am going to agree it's not high enough.
I'm sorry.
I was thinking that would be sufficient, but if it only works out to 24,000 annually, I don't think that's going to attract anybody to stay with us in the long term.
But that's not a calendar annual, that's a school, 185, right?
It's 185 days.
Right.
It's a school year.
So it's not
And
like,
what's the minimum starting salary of a teacher with a 4-year degree?
He had
that
it
we're
open. Do
paying.
you still have it? So for next year,
It's going to be 38,157.
38,157. Do you have the para salaries there too? So I do want to keep some of my paras and not have them all decide they want to sub.
You only have so much sub openings based upon attendance.
Next year, with no experience, $11.85 an hour.
But our subs that are currently working aren't at that scale. They're at the other end of the scale, for the most part.
Our paras all have to have at least a two-year degree or 45 hours of college.
Yeah.
I mean, I guess the other thought process I'll put out there is, I know it's part-time, but when you look at the 38.7, we're also paying benefits on top of the 38.7. And I don't know, I think
Well, that's not part-time, that's a first-year teacher.
what I'm saying is on the substitute,
Oh,
if we're
okay.
looking at setting a part-time rate, that part-time rate doesn't include any benefits.
Correct.
And if we get six bodies in district, I think we're budgeted $75,000 a year in substitute money. I think it's $25,000 a building. I just think we're going to be better off than where we are now. But
What was your suggestion? To go to 20?
Which one?
yeah, I
I
think,
think
Said that well.
I'm way lost.
20 was my happy medium with 10, yes.
On New Hampshire certified or retired?
Yes.
I could agree with that. And I think prorating down from there,
What would you look at for your minimum?
I would stick with a minimum of 14, if not $15 an hour for non-certified teacher. I mean, this is a day rate. So this is,
Okay.
we get somebody for a day, then we call them a month from now.
So if it's 15 and 20, then is your middle ground
Holding a 4-year,
1750?
yep, holding a 4-year college degree, I would say that would, I could put it there.
And then 15 for the non-certified?
Yep,
so 15, 17, 20?
17, 5, and 20. This has been an issue where we haven't been able to fill the positions, and if we're going to have our teachers backfill, it'd at least be at a higher rate when they can do it, and we would be getting, especially if we can attract 4-year college students or with degrees and New Hampshire certified teachers, I think we'd be better off in a classroom.
So I have two questions. Number one, rate starting when? And number two, does this change what we're paying teachers who are covering during their prep periods?
I'd go,
Okay, I'll take the second one.
Okay.
Do we have it in their contract how they're compensated?
In their contract, it is based on the current rates. Yes.
So if we were going to change that, we would need a memorandum of understanding.
Yes, we would.
August 30?
I was going to say beginning of the next school year. So what are we, 7 weeks out now?
Roughly.
But in the case of those bargaining units, which would just be the teachers, or would also be the paras?
Paras have a flat rate bargained in on theirs.
we know
Paras
it?
are $40 a day if they take over a class.
But are they taking it over as a
addition-
para, or are they taking it over as a teacher?
If they take over as a substitute, they get additional $40 a day above their, what they get as para.
Mr. Chair,
Go ahead, Joel.
Ruth Ellen, does it say current rates or does it list the current rate? Because if it just says current rates and we change the current rate, why would we have to have a sidebar or an MOU?
It lists the rate.
It actually lists the actual monetary rate.
Yes, it does.
Okay, thank you.
Yep.
But if we shoot for the beginning of the next school year, that gives us time to get an MOU out there and written form, agreed upon, and
I don't think it would take long to do, but I understand what you're saying.
The other thing that would have to be in there, that if we change these rates for the reasons that we're doing it now, and then we find that that doesn't work for us budgetarily, or it's potentially more than what we should have gone, and we decide this board or the next board backs up some on some of these rates, those agreements have to go with it.
I think it would have to be written at current rate so that we don't go back and renegotiate it every time
Right.
the rate changes.
So if we change the rate, a subsequent board changes it back, say $2 an hour, because we have, say it's an influx of people to pick from and we don't have the budget resources to pay them, there could be a decision that's made later and those MOUs would need to still be in force.
What the contract says is he or she will be paid based upon the hourly equivalent of a certified substitute rate. Payment will be determined in accordance with the table below and upon submission of a time card signed by the building administrator. So we are basing it on the rate. The teacher's rate would simply go up.
Right.
So we're good with the language in the contract based on
It's
us
just the
raising
table
it.
that would need to change. Because the table does specify a
The
rate.
table in the contract or this
The
table?
table in the contract specifies a rate.
Where is the rate in the table?
Is it what page? You're on a different page.
I'm looking at 8.3, section 8.3 of the current contract.
You're the para contract. Back to compensation. Oh, you're right. I stand corrected because I looked over at the para contract as well. It does say by how much. So just by the time as opposed to the rate, and it is at current rate. So you are correct, it wouldn't need to be renegotiated
In the teachers.
On the
in the
teachers.
teachers.
But the paras may be a different situation.
Pairs just says this much per day more.
Which is fine too. Because that's what they get paid if they're substituting.
But every time you change a rate on a substitute too, you have to have them sign off that their rate is changing. And they're aware of it. You can't just arbitrarily change it at some point.
When you say,
Well, if I have
Who's
a
signed
sub who's been subbing all along,
Yeah.
I need to make them aware that there's now a new rate.
Right.
Whether it goes up or down, so they have them sign off.
okay,
That's your headache, not ours.
so I will make that motion to change the daily rates to 15, 17, 5, and 20, with changing the Hampshire certified requirement to also add retired, New Hampshire retired?
New Hampshire retired?
Yes,
Effective 21-22 school year?
yes.
So not effective now.
Correct.
Effective the start of next year.
July 1. July 1.
Yeah, July 1.
Okay. Okay.
Is there a second?
Second.
everybody wants to.
Discussion. Is there any,
The only thing I'd put out is 6 months from July, can we review this to see where we're at?
yeah,
You know, I've got no problem with the 20 if that's going to bring people in.
Make sure that we're
Make sure we're
not
there.
falling off the track budgetarily.
Well, budgetarily, and if we're not getting people in the door, then we got to ask why. I think there's a good pool of employees out there. You work 30 years as a teacher, you retire, at some point you miss your kids. So to me, that's the employee that we want to attract and bring back in the building. They're experienced, we're certified. Some of them are going to have relationships in our buildings already. If $20 an hour does it, God bless them. If we have to go up, then let's talk about that in 6 months.
Do you think you'll have a good sense in October?
Budgetarily?
Well, 6 months from the effective date.
We don't typically hit our substitute season in the fall. It's usually more into the winter. Let's face it, we need a normal year, and then I'll tell you.
But for whether or not it's effective in attracting new substitutes, you'll...
I can see if people have added their names to the sub list, yes. Does that mean that I have a deeper pool that will actually respond to a call? By Thanksgiving, I'll probably have a sense of where it's going, but really it's as I get to January to March, that's my deeper hitting the sub pool list.
So I guess, I'm going to call a question on my motion. Any other discussion, which is changing the rate?
Can I just...
Go ahead, Joel.
One thing. I don't think that money is the only factor here that prevents people from subbing. I think we need to, and I'm not opposed to this at all, but Ruth Ellen, the substitute handbook is obviously a good step. Are there ever any orientations, whether they be quarterly, you get a new group of subs, not that you have to attend it to start subbing, but, if you did one quarterly and could get your pool of subs to get some orientations, to get some minimal training
And that's,
with some of the things that are addressed in the handbook. If I may, I think one of the things that Mrs. Pomeroy is doing at Henry Wilson right now with shouting out to substitute teachers in her Tiger Tales that she sends out on Tuesdays is another great way to make somebody feel valued rather than just the hourly rate.
Right.
Makes them feel part of the school community. So I think this is a great step, but I think there's other factors too that would make you help you attract and retain substitutes.
absolutely. The orientation is the next step. I need a handbook that I can use in the orientation. But yes, that is definitely in the works, and I'd like to be running one in the next few weeks.
So I agree with Joel. If we were going to have, say, orientations that subs could participate in to get up to speed and ready to substitute, I think they should be on the first wave of call list over somebody that hasn't attended an orientation class. And how often would you hold that orientation annually?
I'm looking at
Biannually?
least quarterly.
Quarterly, so I would agree with that. If we had it 4 times a year, potential new sub could attend the orientation, get on the list, and hopefully be prepared when they get the call. So any other changes that people want to make to this document? Do we want to put that in this document when that we're going to hold quarterly orientations?
Well, would that come in in the orientation part of the substitute process?
Yeah, I don't know that we want to necessarily put the dates in the handbook, but I think that I have no problem with the expectation that there are quarterly orientations held.
Right.
And
I
I
think that
would-
maybe we should at least point to it here somewhere, adding to it that we
Where would you like that?
I'm not the author of the document, but whether we make mention in reference to orientations that may be held up to 4 times per year for a potential substitute. And
Why don't I put it right after the wage schedule?
there you go. And that schedule can be set somewhere else based upon the availability of people to do it and what else is going on, but at least be made mention in this document that if somebody was looking for it, they said, well, look, I can have an orientation class. I could find out what's going on and feel more comfortable in doing the position, because they may feel uncomfortable even signing up because they're not sure what they're in for.
When I was in another district, the administrators between central office and building administrators would take turns doing the quarterlies. There would usually be one central office and one building administrator that would run each one so that it didn't land on just one person, but we all used the same materials for the orientation.
Is the orientation compensatable? Are they paid to join?
In
or
the
is-
district where I was previously, it was, you had to attend an orientation in order to be able to sub. We kept them to about an hour, then with contact information for them to be able to get with us if there was anything else that they wanted to discuss more at length. But we kept it fairly short, but you need to come, you need to at least have heard this part and know what these other trainings are that you would be expected to do. It was kind of
So,
the job fair and here's what you got to do to get to
So
the
I
next
think
year.
if it's voluntary and it's no more than 2 hours, I'm okay with it being not compensated, but if any time we make it a requirement, we have to pay them.
Yeah.
But I think if we open it up to people, because some people may already know what to expect, they've already done it, and say, well, I don't need to go to the orientation, I've been a teacher for 30 years, or I've done it in Farmington, so I know what they expect.
I was thinking about adding terminology that said something like attending an orientation. One of the 4 available orientations is a condition of employment. Or does that lock us in?
I think it locks us into compensating, and I think it may not
Okay.
be necessary in a lot of the cases because the person may be working here already or have experience as a teacher.
I think you could grandfather current employees,
Yeah.
but
Yeah,
it sounds like Joel has a comment.
go ahead, Joel.
Yeah, sorry. I was, jumping into the screen. There's a potential if you developed an orientation and maybe some subsequent substitute teacher workshops that just address things in general to public education, not necessarily school-specific things. You could potentially, if it was done well after, a period of time, attract other districts that may want to send their subs to some type of training like that don't currently do it within district and generate a little revenue. Just a thought.
I guess my only problem on the orientation is you can't have an employee volunteer to work in the state of New Hampshire. If we're going to bring them in, and we're going to have them attend orientation, it's work-related to work, and we have to pay them.
If we require it. If it's a
No, you
requirement.
cannot volunteer to do work in the state of New Hampshire. That's why all the police that played in charity ball games get compensated. You can't do it.
So what's the board's decision?
If they're going to be...
Mandate it and accept waivers for people who've already had subsequent training? Or do we make it voluntary and non-compensated? Mary?
Well, he just said it, voluntary doesn't
Yeah,
work,
that's
so.
just,
Well, I disagree with that, but 'cause if we make it mandatory, we have to pay. But if you say, here's an orientation for a position you might like, and they choose to come, they're potentially not even an employee yet. You haven't hired them.
If you're doing it before hiring as an orientation, I'm okay with that. Once they're on the books, they cannot attend an orientation because it's considered work as a district employee without compensating. You're going to get spanked by Department of Labor.
Make it open to the public.
I mean, what is our hiring process? I mean, we don't really, how are we hiring now?
They fill out an application, they come in, if they're contact, they come in, fill out paperwork, we wait for the fingerprints to come back. Once we get, we've checked references, we have background check back, then they come in, they talk to somebody in the schools, kind of get a quick overview, and they're on the list.
So I'll cut to the chase. I'll make a motion to require the orientation unless waived based upon their prior qualifications or orientation in this district, and that to be compensated at whatever rate they qualify for.
A second for discussion.
Discussion?
My only thing is, do you want to, on the mandating the orientation, do you want to mandate that and put the word new employees in there? So our older staff are grandfathered, or do you
Well,
want?
my motion was to grandfather anybody that was already, say, may have experience in the district and doesn't need to go
And
to
so I
the
guess-
orientation.
My question there is, who has the authority to waive?
Superintendent.
Okay, and then second, I may have someone who's been a Valley View employee but might need an orientation for this building.
Then that's up to your discretion, and you
Okay.
have to pay them for it.
Okay.
Because if you feel they need to have an orientation, they probably need an orientation, and they should be compensated.
But that's after, the orientation that you're talking about is after they've been
Hired.
hired, okay.
But if we've got all these requirements that we've town listed for them to be hired, they put in more than 5 minutes to get the job.
Sure.
They've gone through this check and a background check, so at the next point, okay, now that we've hired you, now we're gonna start paying you, and if you need 2 hours of orientation and we're compensating for you, then, I mean,
I'm good
both
with
people have significant time at this point invested into getting on the list to be called.
I'm good with that.
Josh? Joel?
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Any discussion on that?
No, thank you.
Not hearing any discussion, all in favor?
I
Aye.
So it's a requirement, you can waive the requirement and to be compensated. I mean, because depending on the situation, that orientation might have to happen on a case-by-case basis. Say it might be scheduled 3 weeks from now, but you need 2 substitutes now, and you said, okay, we're gonna do this orientation
Yep.
because they're starting.
Right.
Anything else on this policy? I'll make a motion to approve as amended.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
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 Motion passes.
That's the second read. Will it be a final, or?
No, I just made a mo-
You consider
This was the
second?
final.
Okay,
Yeah,
all right.
so the amendments we made will be put in and it's approved. Next
you.
on our agenda, which was the drone policy, first read. So,
Both this and JICD have been to the policy committee.
okay. So, where did the drone policy originate? From School Board Association? We
Yes.
drafted it ourselves? Okay. Is that on?
I requested it from the School Board Association. They did not have a boilerplate just there. I requested one when we had drones
Yeah.
donated to the district, knowing that they were talking about getting something done,
Right.
but I was hoping to speed up the process just a smidge. I wouldn't say that the process of getting it from them was easy, but I do now have it. And we have,
And this is it?
this is that,
Right.
there are some things that are taken out of it.
Okay. So I'll start off with just my comments. There's a lot of acronyms in here, and I think it should have a definition section. If you go to the FAA document, they reference 107, they start out with a definition section. And in some of this, there's one term that's used, it says RPC/COA operator. I don't know what a COA operator is, and I could not find that in the document 107.
That's right above it. So it's a remote pilot certificate or certificate of exemption authorization. It's right above.
So it's a certificate of exemption authorization?
Remote pilot certificate.
Yeah, I
Certificate
I know what that was.
authorization.
So it's a certificate of of exemption or authorization. Okay, because I didn't see that referenced in a 107 document at the FAA. There's just one comment. The other section, which I thought was, it refers to this policy has separate provisions related to drone usage depending on whether the use is unrelated to compensation of any kind or whether the operator or person will or may receive direct or indirect compensation related drone. I didn't see that split out in this document.
Because we took that part out,
Okay.
and then that line also should come out.
Okay, because I don't
Is that
think
what you
in this
would-
program we're doing that.
Because Josh and Mary, as we were talking about that, we took out the section that dealt with giving permissions
Right.
if or because.
Right.
We took that out, which means that that line should also be
Yeah.
removed because
So this references a
no
section
one's
that's
doing
related.
anything for compensation here. It's
Right.
Right.
kids for class. Okay.
My other thing was reading through it, it talks about, under FAA regulations, operation of a drone used for recreational purposes with no compensation, direct or indirect, fall within a category of hobby or recreational use. I did not see that in 107, so I don't know where that was being referenced. I don't disagree with it, and I think the use that we have would meet that exemption, but I did not see that in that FAA 107 or a subsection. So I don't know where that reference comes from. My other concern was,
I think we could probably strike that paragraph.
Yeah.
which one?
Well, it started with this policy. We just lost the first sentence, and I'm thinking the rest of that paragraph that goes down to the reference that was a little bit rocky with the remote pilot certificate, none of that is something that we're really dealing with.
That was I was down,
You're under C, correct?
I was under C.
Oh, okay, I thought you were back in A.
No,
still.
I was under C. It might be in that section also.
Yep.
But if we're falling under that exemption, then it should be a reference somewhere of where it states that. I couldn't find it. And one thing I don't see in here, it talks about safety, but what safety protocols are we going to have in place in this program or this policy? Is there a...
That would be R, that wouldn't be part of the policy, that would be part of the procedure.
Okay, so as long as we have that in regards, whether it's a distance while the drone is operated or a zone where participants can be, it doesn't reference that, so it's going to be in another document. The other thing that was somewhat confusing, we're saying that we're allowing some of this drone usage and instruction to happen if the supervising teacher is not a remote pilot certificate or certified. But it says it's only limited to these few things, so my question is, does it make sense to even do it if the person that's providing the instruction is not remote pilot certified? Should we even be doing the activity? Because how is the person who's doing the educational portion going to make sure they're following all the FAA requirements if they're not certified to know what those requirements are? Follow what I'm saying?
I do.
We're saying that we're going to do it, and they said, but if that person's not available, we're going to have somebody else allowed to do some instructional. So that's where my concern is, how is that person that's, say, filling in, because I'm assuming the intent is the instructor has his remote pilot certificate.
This
Is
says
correct
that,
assumption?
now, unless a supervising teacher holds a remote pilot certificate, the teacher, employee, volunteer may only use or operate the drone incidental to student use.
Right.
So it's not a matter of, unless that teacher they can't be out here just running it for themselves on the weekends
No,
for
that's
grants.
not the way I read it, because it talks about permitted incidental use without that may include regaining control of a drone, and it may not do like a full flight demonstration. Use may remain secondary and incidental to the student's operation of the drone at the time in order to maintain the hobby and recreational status. My concern is that we've got instruction going on, and that person leading the instruction doesn't have the proper certification in the eyes of the FAA and knowledge of what they should and shouldn't do, as far as not so much the safety of the students, but safety of what they need to adhere with at the government level.
So,
I mean, I don't have an issue if somebody's there and somebody needs to take over in an emergency, but if we've got an educational event going on here, or a class, the person holding that, I think, unless somebody can give me a reason why it should be somebody that has that certificate. I assume that was the
so we're going
intention?
to require that of the teacher in order to use the drones with the class?
Okay,
That's my question.
is it? No.
My question is, so we're going to require the teacher to obtain that certification in order to use the drones with the class?
When I read this, the answer I got was, it looks like we were going to, so was that not the intent?
I guess that's a question I have for the board.
This is something I don't have any expertise in. I went through that requirement today, the FAA 107, trying to get a better handle on it. So I'm not saying at this point I feel it's a requirement, but this document leads me to
Does
feel
lead to,
that
yeah, it looks
it was
like
going
it's
to be a requirement.
Right.
So if you're saying it doesn't need to be a requirement, and these are reasons why it doesn't need to be a requirement, then this doesn't really fit that as far as how it's written. And I'm not saying I'm not okay with that.
Right.
Because our goal is to have this program, and we need to meet our minimum safety requirement. And can we do that without the person being certified? I don't know. So that's my question. I mean, obviously, I assume somebody in the district has an idea of how this was going to work and who this was going to work with.
Well, and remember that these were donated, so they weren't necessarily, to start the program, it wasn't just,
Right.
but, right.
So, I mean, that's just another question, and I got another one. Go ahead, Tim.
We just got a different read of this. So under federal law, you can fly a drone without a remote pilot certification for hobby purposes. Once you go into a compensatable act, you need the FAA license to
Yes.
operate that drone.
Yes, that's clear.
So my reading on the paragraph that you're kind of hung up on is, it's defining what the teacher's role is. They're not being compensated to do drone classes or drone certification training to our kids. What they're being compensated for is secondary and incidental to the student's operation at the time in order to maintain hobby or recreational status. So what the paragraph is saying is, this club that we're using to fly the drones is remaining in a hobby recreational status if you're not licensed as a remote pilot. Because if you're a remote pilot certification, it doesn't kind of matter what you're doing, but if you're not, then the feature of this class has to be more of a hobby or recreational status.
If that's what it's trying to say, it doesn't do a very good job.
Yeah.
It also means that the teacher can't use the drone for any purpose other than to correct course or,
Right, in that it says that it may not construct any full flight demonstration nor off-site practice flights using district-owned UAS, which is a whole nother discussion, which I've got questions on. I'm not disagreeing with you, Tim, it may be to say that this use does not require the instructor to have a remote pilot certificate. And if that's okay, I'm okay with it.
But the way that this is also worded is that they must remain on campus to do it. And I think frankly, that makes sense anyway, because if they're going off campus, we don't necessarily control that space. On campus, it's our, I mean, obviously if they get too high and they're bumping into planes, we got problems. But, immediately over our campus, it's a space that we control. If we're looking at, taking it down to Frontal Park and it, goes a little bit awry and ends up, over a neighbor's house, we then start having issues. I mean, it makes sense that they're staying here.
That boils, so to get back to this paragraph, I think it maybe needs to go back to whoever's plans to structure the program to rewrite this based upon being in compliance and what the intent is, because what it says here, it says that person, if they're not RPC certificate, may not construct any full flight demonstrations, and would be part of the instruction. So that doesn't fit with if that's what the paragraph is trying to say. Here it's saying that their activities are limited unless they're certified. That's what this is saying. And I don't know if that's what you want to say.
Right.
It sounds like I would say no. You don't want to say that because it falls under the hobby exemption, which is not referenced here, or where it's found. I couldn't find it. I'm sure it's there somewhere, but in an hour hunting and pecking, I couldn't find it.
I think it might be better off if we require the certification for the teacher. I mean, this is following FAA guidelines. So it's saying, FAA is saying you can't fly the drone if you don't have a license.
It doesn't say that.
The FAA is saying it. This is referring back to the FAA advisories.
It does say that, but in the upper part of this document, it says that if it's for recreational hobby use, it's not required. I don't know where that is in the FAA regulations.
But the class wouldn't fall under recreational hobby use. The class would be under the stipulations that follow remote pilot certificate or higher certificate.
It may be. It may be. Somebody may have to make that determination.
So I would say that we require the remote pilot certificate for the instructor of that class. Then
At district cost?
just on a quick search, it's $160.
Yeah, but this time, I think if we're going to put this out, I'd like to see you, Ruth Ellen, with a recommendation. Is this going to be a club? Is it, how are we going to structure it? And then if it's a club, then a stipend position or what we normally do. And kind of like to, get some input about who you have in mind to run the program, so we kind of know what's doable or not doable.
Right. And then I'm going to jump to some other things in the policy. One, it talks about that it's only going to happen on school, I'm going to back up. It says that drone usage is not permitted unless we permit it over school grounds. So
Meaning
is
that
this
somebody else can't fly a drone over school.
based upon what? Law or regulation? Is this a protected airspace for a drone that they can't fly into? I don't know. So if somebody...
Only if we have a policy.
But if we set a policy where, say we've got a neighbor to these grounds that has a drone, and he flies onto our property, you read this, when you read this, it says it's not permitted and a violation of applicable laws. There's only the permission to fly a drone over this property is only given by the superintendent or the designee, and basically, it would be considered a violation of applicable laws. So my question is, what are the applicable laws regarding this property that we're now adopting a policy on? Do we have the authority? Is this protected airspace because if it's a school? I don't know that answer. Or is there a height requirement for that we can, let's say it's 85 feet? Drones are not supposed to be
There is a height
past
requirement.
400. So this is on a drone, FAA is 400, unless it's next to an obstacle where it has to go higher to get over that obstacle, but it's 400, it's not 700, that's another airspace. So what are our rights here to say, you can't be here? And
Also looking at closing down the campus so that I don't have somebody who comes up on the weekends to fly a drone out over campus causing other issues. And you don't get to do that without permission. It's not
how do you know?
open grounds to do that. We do have cameras.
No, but how do you know that flying a drone over this property requires the permission of the school district? And how is that different than if somebody's flying a drone over my house at 400 feet? I assume that's permitted. And what makes it not permitted here, if it's not permitted? I don't know that answer. So, because this policy says it's not permitted, and we're going to enforce it. And my question is based upon what?
And with what?
Federal law or local law, we're making this a no-fly zone, because I don't know if it exists. I know local airports are, maybe some federal buildings.
I don't think we would fall under a no-fly zone.
What's
Probably
that?
not.
I don't think we would fall under no-fly
We're
zone.
not, because our emergency landing field's in our football field, I think.
Right.
I think that's something, a designation under the FAA. If we went to the FAA and asked them to designate us a
Right.
no-fly zone.
We'd be chasing people off. Well, they might say, we have a drone, and next thing you know, a neighbor has a drone, he's flying over in an area that we're saying you can't do that, but he may have rights to do that, and we can't. We're, setting a policy infringing on rights that we can't do. And the other question I came up is, why wouldn't we want, if we've got a program, allow those people in that program to go other places besides here if it's permitted? Like if they were other areas to set up with, talking to somebody today that had a drone, there's local areas that you could go that's set up for drones where people can go and like a dog park. It's like a drone park, and you could go there and they have areas that you could have like a trip where we're going to go over here, whether it's on a lake, a pond, a river, or some designated area that allows it, that this group couldn't go. Why wouldn't we not want it? It's no different than a school field trip. So that was a question why we would, because here it says we're only going to allow it here. So my question is that what we really want? We don't want to allow this group to travel to other areas or events? There might be an event.
Has the person that will be instructing the course reviewed this at all?
I do not believe it has gone that far yet.
Okay. Could we have that for the next read?
Sure.
So I hate to,
I just-
fill it full of holes, but
I just have one last
Go ahead.
comment. On the last page, just before the district policy history, to the use of the drones on or over Farmington School District property is strictly prohibited. We want an exclusion in there for if we have the right to exclude that airspace, we want an exclusion in there for public safety, because we could have a brush fire, we could have a missing child, and we don't want to put any red tape in there to create havoc where we don't.
So unless for purposes of public safety,
Yeah,
okay?
that's even if we have the right to
if
say.
we have the right to do
Right.
it. I think there is a number, 85 is in the back of my brain somewhere, but that doesn't mean it's right. But I think
Yeah.
there is a number out there that we have control
But
over.
it may be up to 85, but between 85 and 400, we may not be able to regulate.
Right.
I think the case law was 87. Property rights give you airspace up to 87 feet. That's all that's been litigated so far.
It was close.
And where was that? In this state?
I don't know. I read it somewhere.
Which would be in this area, the tree line. Typically, we don't have trees much past that. So,
So what do we do with it? Do we make a motion to set it back to policy committee? Do we,
I'll make a motion to remand it for a rewrite,
Second.
whatever that entails. Maybe just tidying it up, but maybe,
I think the first step might be to run it by whoever
Right.
is, let's have his take on it, because, we're shooting in the dark on some of these things.
yeah, and this
An RSA
person
or-
may have experience and knowledge
He
of
may
the
be
FAA
able to pick
requirements.
some of
much
these out and
past what
say, you
I've-
can't do this, or you should do that, so.
Right.
it's all,
You can have him
Mr.
work
Chair?
with the policy committee.
Go ahead.
You have an admin in the group that has his hand raised and would like to provide some input. It's Mr. Roberts.
Go ahead, Mr. Roberts. Let us have it.
Well, hopefully I don't sound like squirrels.
Nope,
Nope.
you don't.
Oh,
Nope,
good.
you're good.
Just a quick search basically says is that there's no federal FAA rules that state flying a drone in or near a school zone would be prohibited. However, they consider the school to be a sensitive area in the same category as a hospital, prison or power plant, or other crucial infrastructure. I don't know if that helps at all.
Yeah, but do they give any requirements of a minimum height distance they'd have to stay away, or do they give a perimeter distance or anything like that?
I haven't found that yet, but I'll keep looking.
Okay, thank you. So the motion was to remand it back for revision.
Who made the motion?
I made the motion, Josh seconded it. Any other discussion?
I just want to make a comment that DOE has done an extensive amount of work with their drones, and I know we went to school board, but DOE might have a package as well.
Sure, I can check with them. Typically, they
up there.
don't hand policy, but I will check and see if they'll at least review this one.
But they may have within the existing districts that they've worked with, they might have existing policy that,
Neighboring district, SAU may have
yeah,
had.
there's like
gone through this.
10 districts in the state that now have a drone program with a curriculum guided out of DOE. DOE
Do you have the
hired.
names of those
I
districts?
don't. I'll find them and try to email it, but there
Thank
was
you.
a pretty big article about DOE hiring a coordinator just for their drone program.
Okay, all those in favor of the motion?
Aye.
Aye. Okay, see if we can get back rolling.
Does
Next,
that include Joel?
Joel, you vote?
I'm sorry, I didn't hit my mic. Aye.
Thank you,
Thank
okay.
you. Okay, moving next on to the student discipline and due process policy. Bruce, now if you want to start, because this is a second read.
I'm still taking notes here, just.
Okay, go ahead.
Sorry.
I'll try to find it in my computer here.
I think that's a first read,
Is it?
I believe.
This is a first read as well. You sent them both to policy committee.
Okay.
Did you find it? Or do I need to?
I'll find it.
There was a folder that said policies.
Yeah.
I try to put things in folders, but I know that my organization might not always match someone else's.
Oh, it's in there. I've just got to click the right screen.
Okay,
So I have it.
okay.
Josh's. Does anyone have any
I got
discussion?
just a comment that I'd like to add.
Go ahead.
I don't see pages at the bottom, but after administrative after-school detention, prior to an in-school suspension, I'd like to add Saturday detention not to exceed 3 hours. So your after-school detention is, my understanding the read was capped at an hour. If that doesn't work, then our next step would be a Saturday detention capped at 3 hours, followed by an in-school suspension.
So that was after teacher detention? Oh, no, I'm looking.
After administrative after-school
Okay.
detention.
Discussion on that thought?
Can I ask why Saturday detention disappeared?
Saturday detention disappeared, at least in district, can't talk about the document, because we were finding that it wasn't particularly effective. Kids would end up skipping Saturday detention and being sent to an in-house suspension. We were paying people to stay and do Saturday detention for which kids were not coming. I don't know that, I mean, it's been some time since Saturday detention has been in district.
Were you a superintendent while we had summer?
There has not been Saturday detention since I've been back as superintendent, so that's 5 years.
It was taken out of the budget when Mr. Jazokis was principal of the high school.
So, based upon your experience, Joel, what was your thoughts on Saturday detention? Productive, non-productive, depending on how it was run and who ran it?
My understanding was that it become, at the upper levels, it had become something that was typically either the student misbehaved during or skipped, which resulted in either an in-school suspension or a suspension. So it wasn't being particularly effective. At the upper elementary school, which is now considered your middle school building, we did something called Saturday school. I didn't use the term detention because I didn't want it to be seen as if it was terribly punitive. It was 2 hours for that age group rather than 4, and it was typically used to address truancy and tardiness. Because the argument was, well, we're going to have you make up this time during Saturday school session. Martha Horrigan ran it for me, did a superb job. She was the perfect person for it. Martha does a great job with being firm and fair and caring all at the same time. She's got a good mix. And there were stimulus breaks where they could take a walk around the building or outside for a few minutes with Martha. She would assist them with making up work. If they needed academic support, they got it. So that approach worked at that level, but my understanding from the other principals and administrators at the time is they weren't seeing it terribly effective at the upper levels. But it was structured differently. It was pretty much just a punitive sit there, be quiet, this is detention. There wasn't a lot of processing of why you were there to begin with. So that's all I can add.
Thank you.
And there's someone who might need a Saturday detention.
And I will say that a lot of that processing is what happens during in-house suspensions now. A lot of that processing and makeup time is done with in-house suspension. Now, it is not an additional time that students are literally making up time, which is what Joel's Saturday school did.
But what Tim is presenting is the step between
Right.
after-school detention and in-school suspension.
Understood,
Okay.
which is
So,
what,
because when we put a student in in-school suspension, we're now taking him out of his classroom activities that he should be doing and putting him in another environment, right?
and I think you may be looking at perhaps two different reasons for these two things to exist. If you're looking at Saturday school as, or detention, however, whatever terminology you want to use for the noun there, as making up, as truancy, make-up time, that sort of thing. In-house suspension is, okay, you've done something that has gotten you out or removed from the classroom because of disruption, because of behavior. You're not going back until this has been processed, and then there can be a return. Sometimes in-house suspension isn't the full day. Sometimes it's a portion of a day. But it's time to address that, and it's a suspension of the time in class because there needed to be a break there to address a particular behavior. It doesn't always, it's not always because of tardies, truancies, that sorts of things. And I think perhaps that could be addressed. The other piece that needs to accompany this is the R document that says, okay, now here are the infractions that get you these consequences. And we're going to have to delineate what earns a Saturday detention, what earns an in-school suspension.
Tim? I know this is
I
your...
don't have a problem calling it Saturday school, because if the kid doesn't show up, part of that's on the parents. If it's Saturday school and your numbers go up, guess what? There's a ticket coming your way. I just think, you know, in our disciplinary or educational matrix, the more we can take away from the in-school suspension and pulling these kids out of class, make it miserable for them before we get to that point that we don't hit that mark.
Well, one thought I have, if, say that the detention is based upon not performing their schoolwork, wouldn't it be better served to have them in some additional time for them to get caught up, besides taking them out of their educational environment and in school suspension to get caught up? I mean, typically...
In-school suspension isn't typically to get caught up. In-school suspension is because there has been a behavioral issue that needs to be addressed. It's not a catch-up time. They may be doing some schoolwork while they are doing some processing, because there may not be, you know, a full day's worth of processing to be had. However, it's not that's not a study hall.
Right.
In-school suspension is more like a timeout.
It's a timeout. It's typically with the principal or vice principal.
One-on-one for the whole time.
One-on-one, or as close to as, yeah.
So it's like the old getting sent to the principal's office.
And it depends upon the structure. I know when I taught here, oftentimes I had in-house suspension in my classroom as well. They were under my nose while I was teaching. And
Well, my discussion is, I'm not opposed to adding it. We may procedurally not, I mean, it wouldn't hurt to add it and say, at this, during the implementation of the next
an option.
document, that it's only applied in certain situations and may not be rarely used, but having it there, I'm not opposed to, so.
But you can't use it if it's not there.
Right? Because right now we just have after school. And what if that doesn't work in all situations? As far as,
And having a Saturday option is also budgetary impact.
yes, it is.
I don't think it's a major budgetary impact, but it's something that's not currently budgeted for, obviously. And Ruth Ellen, could I add, if I can, Mr. King,
go ahead.
you know, where the section that talks about out-of-school suspensions, I really think it's important to specify that upon returning to school, there'll be some type of meeting, whether it's with the student and the school administrator, the teacher that may have been involved. I know that takes a little bit of coordinating, and they just don't stroll in on the morning that they're back. I'd like to see the parent involved, but there has to be some processing for an out-of-school suspension as well.
Yes, there
You can't
does.
take a kid out of school for 3 days and expect that they learn their lesson, because for some, those out of school 3 days, not a whole lot of structure there.
No, and there is processing as students come in now.
But where does it say that in the policy that that's a requirement?
Correct, and that's an addition that I would agree needs to be made.
The behavior intervention plans? I mean, it's
No,
not...
that's not the processing.
Oh, okay.
It's basically the teaching piece, you know, I mean,
Right.
I went to a workshop once, a great instructor that said, how many people have, speed before in their car? Every hand went up. Well, how many of you got a ticket? And lots of hands went up. How many of you that got tickets still speed? Every hand went up. You're just a little smarter about where you might speed. So the point was that punishment alone doesn't teach. You have to have a piece that's that teaching piece, that processing piece of how you got there and how you're going to, do something differently in the future so that you don't get there again.
The policy does stipulate the behavior intervention plans. Any student that has been suspended more than 10 cumulative school days in any school year.
But that's if there's been, but right now, if there is a 3-day suspension, there's a reentry meeting with the administrator. There are certain infractions that require a reentry meeting with parents and administrator and me, and I'm in on those reentry meetings now. Those happen.
So it's regular practice, it's just not.
It is regular practice, it's just not stipulated here.
So we're going to add that?
I think we should.
Sounds good.
Back to Tim's discussion, adding our Saturday detention component. Mary?
I think it's a great idea. I think that it may not be used like it was when I was in school, but it certainly addresses a level that I guess has been sideswiped in the policy as it is now. There are certain times when that Saturday school detention is going to be the only thing that fits the need. Again, we do have budgetary issues.
Well, I can show you how to do it with $0.
Send them to your house?
Oh,
Tim's volunteering again.
nope.
Josh, your thoughts?
No, wait.
I think it's another diversionary tool. I think it's a good idea.
Joel, any your thoughts on adding it?
No, I think it's worth trying, and I think it's very important on how it's structured. I think there should be at the admin level a very serious conversation about how are we going to structure these. We're just going to stick people in a room with an adult. They don't speak for 4 hours. I don't think it's going to work, but it can work because it has in the past.
Yeah. So I would agree. I think we should have that added to the policy. How that's implemented will be in a subsequent procedure.
Would you like to hear from the administrators
Go ahead.
in regard to in-house suspension?
In-house or...
Giselle, or are you
In-house, we have in-house.
in-house or?
Hey, it's Giselle.
Hey, Giselle.
Hi, so this is probably one of the things that I've been working on the most in the past couple years. So a really good example would be if 2 kids got into a fight. We really need to do the educational piece. In the past, those kids would have gotten an out-of-school suspension, and depending upon the severity of it, they would. But then when they come in, they would have at least 1 day in-school suspension. One of the things that they would do is they would do a research project on simple assault and mutual combat, and they would interview the school resource officer, and they would put together, whether it's a poster or a Google slide, something along those lines to show what they learned. Then I typically have them at some point in the day interview each other, so that way they then have some common ground. They know a little bit more about each other, and they tend to not fight when they know one another a little bit better. And usually by the end of the day, I try to have them play a game, keeping in mind that this is 4th through 8th grade, so depending upon the kids, we might play a game of Jenga so that they leave feeling good. We talk about what it's going to look like in the classroom the next day, because I don't want them being cool that they got in school or out of school suspension. I want them to know how they should enter a classroom and treat each other, where they can go if they're still feeling any anxiety about this or any problems. So, that's the kind of thing that happens. For swearing, I typically give homework on language and appropriate language and words we could use instead of the swear. So there's a whole bunch of different tools that we're using in teaching. I really try to look for the lagging skill that the kid has. Why are they doing this? And then try to design lessons around that skill. So I hope that kind of helps at what like a detention or an in-school would look like.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else for Ellen? As far as
Is
administrators?
there anyone else who wanted to speak?
Sure.
That's Paul.
Yep.
Yeah. The squirrels are not bad. For Eric and I, for, in-school suspension, obviously, we keep them busy with any of the work they might need to do, but we also bring in, if we need to, maybe, the guidance counselors, the SRO, whoever we have within the building that we think would be appropriate, basically to echo what Joel was saying. Really, it's a chance, it's a teaching opportunity, and so trying to help them, help them see this is what got them there. What could they do differently in the future so they don't? And just make it, it's, for lack of a better word, it's a teaching opportunity. And sometimes teaching, the behaviors or teaching other behaviors to cancel out whatever they did, it takes time and stuff like that. But we generally, again, we look at it as a teaching opportunity, and it's not just simply an all-day study hall.
Okay, thank you, Paul. Back to the document. Anyone with any suggested changes or concerns? So how does the board want to proceed? This is a second read. Do we want to have a
This is the
third
first
read?
read.
This is
Okay.
This is the first read.
Oh, first read.
Motion to accept as a first read.
second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
So do you have enough information to make the adjustments to this, Ruth Ellen?
Are there any other adjustments that you
Well, I
want
think
made
the
other than
consensus
what's
of the
been brought
board, we
up?
want to add a Saturday component. And you talked about adding
The re-entry meeting.
re-entry meeting. I don't believe that there was any other discussion that regarding it. Anyone else with any other thing that they want to address? The only thing that I saw that could be added, it doesn't really change the intent, was when it talked about possession of firearms, including BB gun or paintball or other dangerous weapons as defined. Should we list some of those, what we consider as dangerous weapons?
That's set by statute.
I know, but you still leave the statute, but is it mostly referring to knives, clubs,
Let's not give them any ideas.
Well, just a thought, just,
I think
Statute also defines, though, how the item is used. So a pencil may not be a dangerous weapon unless someone sharpens it to a point and comes at your eye. So, it depends upon how it's used. And so there's also that piece. And for me to try, I'm not going to list anything that could be used as a weapon.
Any item which is capable of inflicting serious bodily injury in the manner in which it was used.
So, do you just want that definition added?
nope, I'm fine, if you guys are fine with the way it's written, I just, because you get in a conversation, a young boy comes together with a foldable pocket knife, and depending on the interpretation, that's a weapon, and what degree is that? 1-inch blade, 3-inch blade, he's got nail clippers on it, and he's got a money clip, and it's got a knife this long. So I don't know what the determination is here, but
Handbooks, basically, it's no knives.
Yeah.
So, if you've got a plastic knife for, from cutlery for your sandwich, we're not going after you. But,
okay, I guess I don't have any other comments. So we all set with this? Moving on to the next item. Back to new business. We have school district treasury opening. Recently had a resignation of a school treasurer and last week. Ruth Ellen had put some information in the folder for the board to review regarding the details of that. But at this point, we need to notify the community that that position is open. And I think it's the best interest to allow at least a week for anybody interested in that position to contact Ruth Ellen or the members of the board, which should direct them to Ruth Ellen, if they're interested in the position, and what, if any, personal professional experience would make them a good fit for this position.
And certainly finance background is very helpful.
Or accounting. Or accounting.
Finance,
Or
accounting.
Finance and accounting.
So anyone with any, and at that point, hopefully at next week's meeting, we'll have a few candidates for the board to consider for this appointment, which would be until the next elected official.
It would be
For the next election.
Next election.
Until the next election in March, yes.
And this is a position that's elected every year, or what is it?
It's an annual
It is an
election,
annual term.
yes.
Yes.
And actually, our attorney did give us that for schools, it is an elected position. We can appoint if there's a vacancy, but there is not a place in the statute for school to appoint. There is for municipal, but it's an elected position for schools. And that opinion is in your folders as well.
Cooperative districts can actually not elect because they have multiple towns.
Okay. So you're saying by statute, we have to have it as elected position?
It's an elected
But where it's
position
vacated, we
unless
can
there's a
appoint.
vacancy, then we can appoint.
Tim?
Yes.
Mr. Chairman, does it make sense, and if so, I'll make the motion to accept the school district treasurer's resignation with regrets?
I think it would be appropriate.
So I'll make that motion.
I'll second. Any discussion?
I just want to thank her for her service.
Absolutely.
Perfect.
Any other discussion? Not hearing any, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Right.
So anybody interested in being considered for that appointment, please contact Ruth Ellen, the superintendent of schools, and she will forward us that information prior to our next meeting, which hopefully we will have some candidates to pick from.
And your next meeting is on the 19th.
Next Monday. Next, we have learning loss positions for fall under ESSER.
Yes.
Go ahead, Ruth Ellen.
Okay, of course, my computer's gone to sleep again. So during our meeting, and I didn't include this specifically, I wasn't sure if there would be a report from the committee, but one of the things that we discussed in our meeting on Friday was positions that, as we have looked at where we are, what our needs are going to be, and what opportunities we have moving forward with some of the ESSER monies. What might we be able to do to make a more robust program going into the fall? Some of those considerations, one you've already talked about and have approved as truancy officer. I have given you job description. You've approved that. We're looking at wage studies. We had a data manager position that was grant funded. That person left partway through the year. One of the things that we may need to do in conjunction with everything else that we're looking at, we're going to need attendance data. We're going to need a great deal of data input that is part of the learning management system. We're going to need to look at the intersection of behavior and grades and attendance. As part of that learning loss piece, and as we're looking to move forward, does it make sense to reinstate that data manager position under ESSER for the next couple of years? I would like that to be considered. we have looked at whether the student assistance program counselor could be included under ESSER. We have it in the budget now as a limited position with some benefits, but it is not on the teacher scale, and it limits us to what we are able to offer for compensation. It's currently budgeted at around $39,000, which is about a first or second year teacher.
What was that position again?
Student assistance counselor, it's typically drug and alcohol counseling, working with students who are either dealing with that on a first-hand basis or dealing with family members who are. There's both group and individual counseling that takes place under that program.
So your thoughts or recommendation is to increase the pay and benefits for this position?
Yes, to give us a better opportunity to draw an experienced person to that position.
Okay.
We're also looking at Henry Wilson. Last year, to the positions that we cut as we were looking at our funding cut with the budget, we cut down the teaching positions at 7 and 8, and as the shift around with who ended up where with and able to teach, we lost both of our ELA certified positions for grades 7 and 8. ELA is English Language Arts. I would like to add an English Language Arts certified teacher back to each of those grade levels. I think it's important not only for our being able to move forward with testing boosts in our scores, but also if for no other reason, to make sure that we have content area specialists there who can guide the kids in what they're doing. Right now, I have teachers who are doing a good job. They are able to teach it. We can have folks teach up to 50% outside their content area, but it's not their first area of expertise, and I would really like to have that solidified for next year.
And on that position, what was the thoughts of the Learning Loss Committee, or the members on that?
Just off the top of my head, and I got busy the weekend, I didn't have time to put notes before the board. I don't remember talking about ELA. I do remember talking about the data manager and student assistant counselor, which I think will go right along with our learning loss. Realistically, what I'm interested in seeing is we've got a certain amount of money left over from ESER 1. We got $1.7 million coming in ESER 2, and ballpark $4 million coming in ESER 3. So in addition to what's left over in 1, we have at least another $5.7 million coming in. I'm not against the ELA teacher or hire him. I think that fits into a need where our scores are. But I think we're at the point, too, where we really want to look at a budget. What are the timing of these grants that they have to be spent for? What can we spend the money for? And here's our projected budget. Now, granted, it's going to be a fluid document because we might say, a furnace blew up, I need to replace a furnace, so within this budget, I need to find $100,000. But I think it's a lot of money. We've got one opportunity to spend it. My personal focus is that when we spend it on betterment of education, number one, and number two, building projects that are allowable, that are going to save the taxpayers money. But I'm just afraid that as we go down the road, we keep spending. All of a sudden, we're going to say, without the planning, hey, we need something, we don't have the money for it.
So I would agree with that. I think in this case of those positions, I would be in favor of the three positions as stated, but we need to kind of get those budgetary documents kind of rolling, saying if we say this is what we're going to add, what's that fiscal impact, and how does that affect our funding to say, okay, if we're going to say we give a nod of let's pursue this and say, what is it going to be the cost to the district to add? And it's going to come out of the ESSER 2 funds, maybe some out of ESSER 1. Where does that leave us on that segment?
And these pieces were to be brought forward as kind of a, here's what we talked about in our thinking, looking to have those figures to you for next week or right after break. I knew that I was not going to have those to you over the weekend.
No, and that's okay.
And then the other two pieces that were in there, a math interventionist / instructional coach for the high school in math. I said in math, sorry, it was redundant. And then we have a Title I interventionist position at Valley View for this year. That Title I funding will not be present for next year, and we were looking at wanting to keep that position as well. So I will send you this in writing so that you have it, and I will get you those figures so that you have a ballpark of what that would be. Typically, when I budget for a new position, just so that you understand my thought process, I place it somewhere around step 9 or so on the scale so that I'm hitting middle average. I may end up being able to hire somebody who's further down. I may hire somebody that's a little bit further, but I'm not budgeting for top of the scale, but I also don't budget at 0, at step 0, so.
Okay, so you're going to have that for the next meeting.
I will do my best to do so.
Okay, moving on in the
Poking
agenda.
Brian, yes.
There are some other issues, or other items, I should say, in the folder.
Okay.
One of them is a pre-bid approval form, and the other one is a proposal for radios for the new school buses.
Which one do you want to take first?
Let's do the radios.
Okay, so reviewing that, my first question is this is for the buses?
Yep, every one of our buses has radios in them. They're standard, basically our standard equipment. This would be covered under the ESSER grant, same grant that paid for the buses, because that's the way these are additional buses, and that's the way we outfit them.
So this is additional for the 2 new buses?
The 2 new buses.
Okay.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Tim.
I just got 2 quick comments. So the Motorola model, the XPR 2500, well, the low end is a 25-watt unit, high end is a 40-watt unit. Our FCC license is at 25 watts. So one of the things you may want to talk to 2A about is if we're going to use the higher power at the 40 watts, can we amend our license, and while they're in there, change our mailing address as well?
Yeah, I know.
So that's the only thing that I have on.
Well, actually, the one for the bus radios is 35.
Wattage?
It's 40 watts.
No, it's 35 school
35
street.
School
The mailing
Street.
address is correct on it.
You asked them to change the address.
Change the address on the FCC license,
Yes, that does need to be corrected, you're right.
which
Yep.
is Charles Street currently. So this is there's two wattage settings on this radio. The low power one is 25. It's quoted in here as a 40-watt unit.
Right.
To be in compliance. We can buy it, we can have them put it in, we can have them set it to the 25 watts till we get our license upgraded, but that's what they do, they'll know better. That was my only issue with the radios. I'm in favor of it. It's good pricing.
And any other discussion on that? So our current buses are fitted with the same Motorola radio?
They are Motorola radios. I believe this may be it's a newer version of
So
what we
are the
have.
current models we have settable between 25 and 40 watts? So if
I
we got a
will find
license.
out.
So if we got the
were
license to go to
upgrade,
40,
can we bounce everything else up as
and
well?
if we can't, then we might want to make sure that we have the higher output wattage in areas that are further away.
Correct.
So that they will be,
And
say if we can't upgrade the hardware because there might be fixed 25-watt units, but if they're not an issue based upon their travel area, or do we need to consider upgrading that, or can we make it work?
And right now, I talked with Lynn. We have pretty good coverage anywhere within district with the towers off of Blue Job. When we lose buses, if they go up to Voke, there is a section of Route 11 that we lose them. And Tim had mentioned looking at just doing the
Push to talk.
press to talk. With that, perhaps looking at getting devices that would go with buses that are doing trips. So if I've got a bus going to Littleton, they're not going to catch me on the radio, but they would be able to call back in if there was an issue. I don't know that we want to necessarily go with one for every driver in the district, but we're in the process of getting pricing as well to see what that would do if we chose to go there.
But I think Tim was discussing adding a push-to-talk function on our radios that they may already be issued.
No.
No.
We've got, I mean, we don't have bus drivers with cell phones, but we've got, I mean, when I cost out what we're paying for FirstNet, it boils down to about 17 phones in the district.
We have the pricing for the phones. They're getting back to us with
But
pricing for
what
the...
I'd like to know is where are 17, you know, and some of it may not be public because of what we use the phones for, but I'd like to know where the 17 phones. We got 3 buildings.
I can get that for you.
We got 4 SAU administrators. I mean, to me, is there phones that may not be needed here that can go here that's not going to cost us additional money?
Right. Especially if we
To
can
start with. I'm not saying,
I will get you where the phones are.
Okay. So I'll make a motion to approve the pricing on the radios
second.
with the caveat that the two-way tries to update our license and correct the mailing address for our license.
Second.
It was already seconded, but thanks anyway.
Oh, all right, okay.
It's all right. All in favor?
Aye. Aye.
So the additional money on the license amendment is going to be over and above the 1834, correct? Just want to understand your
Yes.
intent.
Yeah,
Yes.
If we were to upgrade the license, that would be an
Right.
additional cost.
That would be
yes.
additional.
Right.
So are you authorizing me to do that, or just to get a
That-
price
that
on the
was-
licensing?
Yes.
It's not going to be much. My intent was to let you,
Okay, so that motion would be to...
Include.
And include the cost of
Yes.
upgrading the license?
That was my
Okay.
intent.
Okay.
Moving back to,
Yep.
there was
You have
a,
the pre-bid approval form for the laptops.
there's a comment on
Unless I have to do this before I put out an RFP.
go ahead, Tim.
Okay, under your equipment specifications, if applicable, at the very bottom, Pro Support Plus accidental damage for 3 years. So we've got, I'm assuming 80 laptops in the district that are maybe not working the best, but they're working now that need to be replaced. I may not have a problem paying accidental damage on our Valley View and middle school kids, but our teachers are adults, and I think they're pretty responsible. Do we really need to insure 80 units with the accidental damage for teachers?
We included the number of tickets that we've had in the last 2 years for teacher laptops. I believe it was in an excess of 200.
Teachers' laptops on warranty issues or accidental damage? Because there's a difference.
A number of them were accidental damage. They don't handle coffee with cream and sugar well.
Well,
I got
drink
to,
black coffee.
yeah.
You can always quote it and then just see what it costs.
Yeah, I think it should be
Cost-effective.
split out separate.
Right.
Should be itemized separate.
I'd ask it for, as an option.
Yeah, I'm okay looking at the optional price. I just,
So, my question is, when you state equivalent models accepted, what does that mean? If I'm looking at this as a bidder, what does that mean? Does that mean I can quote,
If you have the exact same model, like exact same specifications, but it's maybe an HP, or it's a...
so should it say equivalent makes and models, or equivalent, I don't know. I'm just saying, am I gonna read this, am I gonna think I can quote an HP or another computer?
Typically, that's not been an issue, but we can
If you don't think
certainly,
it's an issue, then I'm fine with it?
we can word it differently if you'd like.
I don't need to if you feel it's gonna get competitive bids from other manufacturers.
Tim, do you feel there's an issue there with the wording?
No, I mean, I was the one that asked to have that put in. It's actually federal law, you have to have it put in.
Yeah, we would need to accept another model if it's under federal monies.
How about other manufacturer models meeting the above specifications will be accepted
Accepted or considered?
or considered?
Yeah,
Meeting or exceeding?
right. Meeting or exceeding.
Yeah.
Because they could have something with a little bit slightly different screen size or hard drive capacity, which would exceed and not, quote, meet, and they may not offer it. So that would be good to add.
Agreed.
Maybe a better resolution?
Yeah, it could be.
It's pretty low.
But, yeah. I assume we're going to buy all the same. That would be my desire. Because I'm sure our tech people will develop some expertise with this, whatever model we pick, and whatever shortcomings it may have. If any. Any other discussion?
Are there any other companies you want added to the list?
Go ahead, Charlie.
So this is a direct solicitation to, I would say HP. Does HP offer to sell direct?
The CDW government contract is for HP, but we can certainly go straight to HP as well.
Yeah, if we're directly soliciting Dell, who else would we just directly solicit to a manufacturer? If they do take that direct solicitation, I would go to HP, but maybe they don't.
They will. They'll look at it if it's got Dell's name on it. If they have something that meets the specs, they'll bid on it if we send it to them, if they know
Yeah.
about it.
Yeah, that'd be my only suggestion. Anyone with any other suggestions? Not hearing any. Brian, you gonna finalize it up and show it to us? Okay. Thanks. Back under new business, what else do we have?
Quick comment.
Go ahead, Tim.
We asked the superintendent to go out and price some type of box lunch for our next meeting next Monday night with our public meeting. She sent a text message today, which I think was a little bit under $6 per,
It's $5.75.
$5.75 per box lunch for the meeting. What I'd like to do is talk about the board's direction at the half hour, 45 minutes that we spent with the public on, what is your vision of what you want to see your student attain by the time they graduate? I'd like to do a quick briefing with the public of, A, what we have for money coming in, B, where we've earmarked our money, what we're doing with learning loss, and then ask 3 questions. What do you want to see a graduate look like? What are the positive things you're seeing in our school community? And what would you like to see us get better at? And I'd like those questions coming from the board with interaction, a quick 15-minute break towards the end where we can intertwingle with the public and get some one-to-one on people that don't want to pick up the microphone and speak at a public meeting. And I'd like to come up with, between this week and next week, some type of response. We can fit 140 people in the gym. Hoping we get 140, but if we get more, then we'll have to reschedule a second session at some point because of our COVID numbers and what we can handle for capacity. And I think a registration will help us with ordering meals too. So who's coming, how many people are coming with you
So, and this is for our event, which is scheduled when?
next Monday.
Next Monday.
A week from tonight.
Next Monday. So if we're going to offer a box lunch, and we're going to have an early sign-up, then we're going to have to anticipate how many will show up on top of that.
I'm going to need to give them numbers. They've got a
Yeah.
tentative number now because orders need to be made. So if we're going,
I'd like to say 100 meals.
Do you think we're going to have that many? That seems like an awful lot.
I think, in a year of COVID at Deliberative, we had 65 people show up.
we weren't feeding them.
And we didn't feed them, you're right. Deliberative before, we had 140 people. I think there's a lot of positive going on in the direction that we're headed that I think people might come out and see if we promote it the correct way. I'd like to be doing some posting on social media and tell people, what we're trying to accomplish and why it's beneficial to get them out and talk to us. And, there's a certain segment of the population that always wants to bash the school system. Well, you know what? We've got a plan, and, we can go with our plan as a board, or we can go with a community plan. You guys decide which one you want. If you want to show up and tell us how, you'd like to see your tax dollars spent and how you'd like to see education improved, I think you'll get a fairly good showing. I think people are dying for positive information in the community.
Ruth Ellen, your thoughts? So if we're going to plan for 575 times 100, where are we getting the funds? Or up to 100, it's...
Well, they would need to come from the general fund. Is it there? It is. Do I need authorization to go ahead and make that order? I'd like to get that. It's within my purview to spend, but I would certainly like to make sure I have the board's blessing on it.
This is something that's not really been normal for us to do, or the board to do.
Correct. And certainly, looking at the format for next week, we've got the auditors at 6, looking to go into the gym for this about 6:30. I think Tim is looking at 45 minutes to an hour.
Yeah, I'd like to kind of keep it half-hour presentation from the board and discussion, unless the discussion keeps going bigger with the public, we don't cut them short, but I think that's kind of like where my mind was going.
I guess.
The only thing to add, I would add that we may want to have some materials available where people want to write down their thoughts and just put them in a suggestion box.
Certainly.
With those 3 questions, because people may want to have some public participation, but they may just want to say, there might be people there, they might say, hey, these are my thoughts, hold it up, stick it in a suggestion box, and then we can use that besides what we hear, but also what we have written for that objective evidence of what they think is good, bad.
So my question too is this something the board is leading? Is this something you are asking me to lead? I just want to make sure I know what my role is next week.
That's one of the conversations tonight. Once the board decides on the content, I think this should come from the board. My intention was to have this as a public meeting with our people that put us in office and ask them questions and guidance that we can use when we're contemplating on making decisions.
I don't have any problem doing it as chair. I may need some assistance here or there from Ruth Ellen or other board members, but I don't have any problem running the event as far as, we'll set forth whatever the direction as far as the procedure that we want to follow, and I can run it from the top with some help.
And certainly what we can do is hook up a laptop, project it.
Right.
I can, or one of my helpers will be in there capturing to make sure that it gets
Right.
projected. I can have notes available for people to put them in a basket. I will have baskets around, just make sure that they understand which basket is for their
Yes.
dinner trash and which basket is for the suggestions.
I mean, similar to a deliberative session that I spoke at, I have no problem doing that as presenting on behalf of the board and the school district and directing the conversation and, you know.
So my question for the board then, as we're setting up, do you want tables up front, much like the deliberative session? Do you want chairs? What's your vision for the setup there? I'm gonna need to have the cart with the projector. Do you want a podium? Do you just wanna be at a table?
Do we,
Because we're gonna have to have set up
Right.
here for a meeting and have something in there and be able to move
Typically, I
back.
think we're going to have at least have a minimum number of seating and microphones or shared microphones for the board and yourself. If you want to have a podium, I can stand at that, or I can stand in front of and just stand up in front of the table. The podium may be easier as far as where the microphone is set. I mean, I don't have a problem working with what we have for hardware there, but I think the board members are going to need to have access to a microphone along with yourself. And if I've got to click through some material, I just need to have a computer set up.
When you say click through materials, so you're looking for me to develop copies?
Well, if we were going to have something, because people are going to be there, and if we want something on the screen, like say if we got to have a question, and say
Okay.
these are the questions we want, and that, that'll
Can do
kind of boil down to a few slides that will keep me on task.
If that's what it takes, then we'll do it.
Cheat sheets.
Okay?
Right?
All right, that works. So back to Tim's original $5.75 a box lunch. Do I have authorization to go forth in order?
I'll make that motion.
Second.
Discussion?
Not on that.
What's on the menu?
We were looking at wraps and/or subs, probably turkey, veggie, and some other meat. Tim
Okay.
suggested it was too close to
Roast beef.
Easter to do ham. He's tired of ham.
I caught 3 this
But-
year.
Pots chicken salad, we'll talk to Tanya.
Real crab.
I don't know that we're gonna get roast beef for $5.75 a plate, but we'll see. Chips, cookie,
Okay.
water, that sort of thing.
Okay, just wondering.
Yes,
Is this local?
yes, I've talked to our food service director to provide this.
I guess
Oh, okay.
my other question for the board is, once we're in the gym, I'd like to do it as a live event. Are we going to have a remote component in there?
That was my intent.
Okay.
We'll work on getting that set up as well.
I'm not so sure that this is the type of event that we want a remote event.
Do we want to at least record it so that it's available
Yes.
for those who wish?
I don't have a problem recording it, but this is
Just want people in person.
we want people in person, we want people face to face, we want to hear their concerns, where they want to go. That's my opinion.
So a recorded event as opposed to a live event.
Yep.
I'm okay with it. Any other discussion on the motion, which is to approve the spending for the box lunch? Not hearing any, all in favor? Aye.
So I'm approved to order 100?
Yep.
And can we check and see, based on, if we put out an attendance form, when they need a final number, if that 100 goes to 125 or 130?
I'll talk to her tomorrow. I may need to be putting in orders tomorrow. I'll check.
Okay. If it's tomorrow, then it's 100, and
So-
we can cut it off at 100 if we
Right,
have to.
so if any board members know of people that are going to be attending,
Let me know.
let's try to get those numbers to Ruth Allen, so that she can at least feel comfortable that we may have a person for every box lunch, or close to it.
Or we will have our custodians eating well.
Very well.
One other new business?
Yeah, go ahead, I have one, but go ahead.
Summer school. Saw a survey that went out, and talking about potential for a remote session in summer school. How are we going to manage that if we're outside? And the board vote, or my understanding of the board vote was remote ends the end of this school year.
I will look at it.
I want to put it out there. I'm opposed to summer school having a remote component. I think enough is enough. Friday, I spent a good amount of time at the middle school. Some of the comments I got back from the staff is how incredibly hard it is to manage the remote and the in-person. I think we're at a different juncture. I think we've got the outdoor space, that we've got plenty of socially distanced area. And I'm ready to get rid of the remote section of it. I don't know how the rest of the board feels, but I'm there.
This is a new discussion for me. I must have missed the survey that went out, but I'll have to think about it. I don't really have an opinion at this point, but anyone else?
I'm also in favor of removing the remote portion, but I don't think that's a secret.
I believe that I am as well, mostly because I think enough is enough. We made some long and hard, you folks made some long and hard decisions early on to come back in full. I think our teachers and staff stepped up to the plate big time. They did everything that was asked of them. Now we're putting out for summer school, and we're gonna say, oh, and by the way, that remote thing that you really don't like, we're gonna do that again. I'm very uncomfortable with that. I just think we need to draw the line where it was previously established at the end of school. Let me ask the question, is it going to kick summer school, kids that need summer school out if they don't have remote? I mean, if that, in my mind.
I think we have a hand up. I would need to look at that.
Go ahead, Diana.
Thank you. So the only thing that and to your point, Mary, the only thing that I would suggest we should consider is those students who continue or have underlying health conditions and have been remote as a result. I think we can work on a means by which to provide them the specialized instruction they might need without, in such a way that it might not impact to the point that teachers would have to do in-person and remote at the same time. And I appreciate your thinking about that for the teachers, because it certainly has been a challenge. So provided we can be flexible around that, I just want to put that out there.
Let me rephrase it then. Remote by choice goes away on the last day of school.
Well, I guess my question is for Diana. When you're saying is this for all students or students
Who have underlying
additional
health issues.
No, I'm talking additional educational needs. Or is she all the students in general? Even
so
those.
I guess I would argue that given, kind of the space we're in right now, that it'd be for any student that has an underlying health condition where coming into the building is a greater risk for him or her.
Okay, and are you limiting that or suggesting you limit it just to the student or the student's parents or grandparents or siblings?
So I would be, personally, you're right, we kind of get into the weeds with that. I would be looking just for the student who has the underlying health condition, but a case could certainly be made for a family that has a child that's medically very fragile, that they might not want the siblings to go in for fear that they might contract something.
And this is just my feeling, and I don't know the numbers because I'm not privy to them, and I don't need to be. But it seems like potentially of the people who have been utilizing the remote learning for these maybe medical concerns, it's not just a concern of that student, it's maybe in the household.
within the household.
And if that's the case, the difference between the first statement of a student with an underlying medical condition, and then you open it up to the entire family unit, which could now be siblings, parents, grandparents, that's a much bigger segment of people, of
So
students.
I guess what I would ask is if we are able to structure so that the students who might not otherwise come to summer programming, who we have identified that there is a specific need, if we are able to do instruction with them remotely in such a way that does not create a doubling up, but we have a provider who is solely remote with those students, and we have this in-house, is that an option that the board is entertaining? I absolutely agree that the concurrent stops, I think we need to be careful about saying medical condition, we're not going to provide access if we've already determined need. But I understand what you're saying.
I will say, if given enough information, I can make a decision, but at this point, I can't say yes or no because I haven't been provided
Numbers
yet.
Yes.
These are the situations, and this is how we could do it. So at this point, I would consider looking at it. Go ahead, Tim.
Yeah, I'll look at any proposal, but I guess the question I'm going to ask you along that thinking process is, I have a peanut allergy, and I'm in the second grade. Does that mean for the next 10 years that I can have a remote education because I have a peanut allergy, which could put me into an anaphylactic shock?
We have made accommodations for those students.
With remote education?
Not with remote, no.
Okay, because that's where we're headed.
I would agree wholeheartedly with Tim, and I would add that offering accommodations is fine, but never at the detriment to the other students that are in person.
Or the staff.
Right.
And I'm not saying I like your process of thinking better than how we're doing it now. So yeah, I would take a hard look at that once we see it in paper in front. But listening to a teacher and what they've been through and what we've asked them to do and what they've accomplished for this year, we burnt some people out, and they did a good job. And at some point, we have to say, and I know the comments with Grandma and Ma and whatever, but Grandma and Ma should have their shots in the arm by now. So is that are we getting to a lesser degree of a problem within the community that we have?
Maybe, but keep in mind too that there are some medically fragile people who are not being allowed to have their shots yet because of those other underlying health conditions. So you can't just make sweeping assumptions and leaps all the time. But I understand until we know who and what, we can't necessarily give you the how many and why.
Well, we can look at an inventory of beginning with the student and then periphery, other potential, but
we're not looking at running two completely parallel programs of here's the remote summer school, here's the in-person summer school. It would be here's the in-person summer school, and if this accommodation needed to be made, we'll see where that goes.
Okay. I
don't see how we're going to do it with our IT outside. I don't see it happening.
Well, if you have a teacher who is teaching a fully remote class, that teacher doesn't need to go outside.
Okay.
Unless they're sitting in one specific spot on the ball field. So.
Okay, any other discussion? Assumes you'll be back to us at the next meeting, you think, with some more details on this, or the meeting after?
The one-
Yes.
Okay.
One of those
The
two.
the one after is, the week after is school break, and we don't meet
Well,
that week.
the meeting after would be the week after school
So a
break.
couple of weeks out,
You also have sports that you were going to revisit.
right?
Oh, that's right. That's right. We did have some feedback from a couple residents in email that I did respond back to that we probably would be talking about and based upon the public discussion at the start of the meeting. I'd like to at least bring it back for discussion. Does the board want to consider changing our policy as far as the restrictions we put on the amount of attendees?
What is standard practice of other districts right now that are less restrictive than us?
Everything from, it's a baseball game, come one, come all, to limiting only home fans.
So I guess I'll make a motion to direct the superintendent to remove all capacity restrictions to athletic games that are held outside and to adjust restrictions to allow for social distancing with the maximum attendees possible.
And I would add that we do have boys volleyball that is inside. So we do have two separate issues here. Boys volleyball is still taking place in gym. Baseball and softball
The
are
motion
outside.
is regarding outside.
Outside.
Right now.
Outside, and then to change the restriction to indoor games to allow for social distance, the maximum amount with social distancing inside.
So it'd be a capacity.
Right.
I'll second for discussion. Tim, you got something?
Had some discussion. It was something I was going to bring up a while ago, but it's great to put rules in place, and it's not great when they're followed. One of the things that I'd like to see for some of the extracurricular activities is with our Easter money, allow an overtime line where a resource officer can come in and can look around and say, hey, you know what? Separate, move away. Or you're in a basketball game, volleyball game, whatever the sport is, you're gonna have to keep your mask on, or you're gonna be asked to leave. And if you're asked to leave, you're not gonna come back. And have that enforcement. If we're gonna set the regulations, we're gonna set the rules. People need to follow the rules, and it's not the kids not following the rules, it's the adults. So I'd like to take 10 grand out of ESA money for public safety and put it in our resource officer, and if she's willing to work the hours, she's in our buildings all the time. Part of that time she doesn't even get paid for.
Can it potentially be another officer if she's unavailable? Because I know that she works for another town as well.
Well,
My only concern with that is if she's working as a resource officer, I think it's time and a half. I'm not sure what the union contract is, but it might be a detail.
well, currently, we got one motion going, which is, Josh's motion is to remove the restrictions for outdoors and to limit the restriction to max capacity with social distancing. I seconded some discussion on that. I mean, you're looking to add is, I think, a separate motion. But one concern I have is if we're going to open up the internal capacity based upon, say, the internal volleyball games, based upon what we can handle, how are we going to handle, and what has been the practice for requiring social distancing among family groups? If we have a family that comes in to watch their children, are we saying you guys can sit next to each other?
We have.
Okay.
We have.
I think that's the way it should be.
And that, I don't want the 4-year-old that far away necessarily.
But even so we're not requiring social distancing between family groups.
Right.
So we're going to allow, by his motion, if we're going to carry the same policy, we're going to have max capacity based upon how you're going to calculate that. If you're going to have a group, say there's going to be 5 people from one family unit, and then another 4-person unit, How are you going to determine that capacity?
That's going to be difficult, and my concern is if we're putting out this many people in the gym, how does that get communicated to people who may be coming in from, so if they show up with 300 people, not highly likely for a boys volleyball game, but it could happen. And if that were to happen, what does that do to our capacity for home fans? Do we say you have 15 players, you can have 4 people per player, or for indoors, so that we have a number that we can put out that's calculable before they get here and we're saying, I'm sorry, we counted noses and your 2 noses too many, you need to go sit in the parking lot.
Well, I think it could be reasonable, because of the space limitations, to have a threshold or number of attendees going to a visiting team, so that you can quantify that. It's a little bit, and then you have an overall capacity that you determine for the space. And then you're gonna have to say no more people can come in. And most of those people, if you give 45 or 50 to the visiting team, and there's 150 that could be from Farmington, and the 150 first from Farmington resident, we've got the lion's share already, and it's not easy to say to a visiting team member that came, family came 2 hours, you gotta go sit in the parking lot. So especially if we can reserve, in the reserve of that space, we have.
So then that means we have, besides doing screening as people are coming in too, so if we've now opened up to, when it's so many people, it's quicker to do screening. If I'm doing screening for 200 standing here in a line, that's going to take longer to get in the door.
I mean, there's some logistics that have to be played out. I mean, as far as the social distancing and capacity, in some ways you're going to need to say, this is what the spacing is, everybody social distance with what we have for seating. And typically you're going to have a minimum of 2 people next to each other. There could be more, there could be less. But if you use an average, saying, okay, at 6 feet apart, you have 85 spots. If they're family, from the same family unit, there may be an average of 2. You can pick whatever number you think is realistic, 2, 3. So then that could get you some additional of 150. That's the number. How they intermingle, you can't control. But you see, you've got to be able to put a number on the space. So how are you going to do that? You've got to say, okay, this is a totally social distance, and what we've got to see from an averaging with a little bit of conservative factor, and then determine the max capacity and work back from there. I don't see how you can do it any other way.
True. So I have 2 questions. One is, none of the feedback that you've had tonight or from the emails that I've been privy to, and I don't claim to have seen them all, have been in regard to indoor. It's been softball and volleyball, softball and baseball. If we're going to determine that capacity, are you wanting then Larry and I to bring something back to you next week? Are you wanting to take a field trip to go to the gym? What's my timetable on bringing you back a number for that?
Can I just put something out? We're in April. School's almost over. We're having sports. We haven't shut them down. On our interior venues, can we limit it to, whether you're a guest or away game, 4 tickets per player? And I'm not sure what those numbers boil down to for space, but we're going to allow double what we're allowing in now. See how it goes and look at it after we address it. Hopefully next year this is going to be over, but we're almost at the end of the year, and we're playing sports. So
I'm not opposed to that, but that's Josh's motion.
So I'll accept that as an amendment.
On the indoor games, to be 4 per person?
Correct.
Per player?
Per player.
per player, both visiting, and to look to see if that number works.
If it doesn't work, then you need to say it doesn't work. You have to revise your motion.
Right.
Mr. King, can you repeat the amendment?
The amendment was to allow 4 people, visitors per player on indoor sports.
So that's for boys volleyball, that would be both home and away, 4 spectators per player.
For visiting fans as well?
Yes.
That's what they've said.
Okay.
So I'll second that friendly amendment. So exterior games will be no limit, as long as they can be social distanced, and interior games will be 4 visitors per player.
Are you expecting contact tracing for outside games?
No.
I think it depends on the population. I think if it hits a certain number, are we required?
No.
If it's that 90 number, are we required to take names for contact tracing?
On an outdoor event?
Yeah.
On an outdoor event, I don't believe we are. Part of the problem is that if they're spread all out around both fields, people come in
Yeah.
from all directions.
Okay.
I don't think we should do it on an outdoor event, and I don't think it's probably not required.
If we're not required, I'm okay with not doing it.
Okay.
Are we doing
I'm just
contract
saying-
tracing now on an indoor event?
Yes.
Okay, then I'm not opposed to continuing.
For outdoor?
Indoor.
For outdoor, we have been. But if we're looking at opening it up, we're also looking at having staff members chasing people for most of the game to make sure that they've checked in.
I don't think that's necessary.
Yeah, I don't think it is either at this point. Indoor, I mean, it's indoor space, ventilation is controlled. Outside, it's free air. So for me, no contract tracing outside, contract tracing as we've been doing inside.
And they still bring their own chairs.
Yes, the bleachers are not out for baseball and softball.
So,
Bring your own chair or pull up a piece of grass.
any other discussion on the motion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
No.
Any reason you want to give, Joel?
I was in favor of the outside portion of the motion, but not the inside.
You felt it was too strict or not strict enough?
Not strict enough. I don't think we need to we're not going to be able to go to a lot of schools, and I don't think we needed to have away fans inside the gym. That's all. And it really wasn't a concern to begin with, so we just kind of lumped it in.
Okay. Anything else for under new business?
There is a letter in here from Jeff Greenhall,
That was mine.
An email.
So,
emailing me, yeah.
I don't know if the board wants to adjust it or table it to the next meeting. I think I'm okay with tabling it to subsequent meeting, based upon the late hour and it's still going into non-public, but
Yeah.
if people want to discuss it, I'm fine with it.
Can we get a recommendation from him? I mean, I saw the extent of what it needs. Is it repairable or is it tear it down? I mean, I've got my opinion based on what he's saying the scope of work is, but
So I believe, Larry, jump in anytime, that he was able to get into the building to tour the structure, and then based upon that, that was his list of what he see needed to be done, that he supplied to the board, right?
Him and his son showed up.
Yep.
To the building, and basically after they looked through, what he wrote to you was what he told me, is basically they said jack the building up, tear out the foundation, put a new foundation, a new pour pad for it.
Yeah.
Got the interior, siding, roof, windows, doors.
Did he have any comment on the sill? That it looked okay, usable?
He didn't really just,
Okay.
no.
So my thought of reading that is to ask Jeff, potentially, could he estimate from his experience what that would be? And that would be, to me, might be the next logical step. Construction manager, could he estimate what that would be, that course of action? And then the board could then decide if they want to proceed with more firm fixed estimates or take that as an approximation of the cost and make a decision on that. That would be my only thought to go next.
Yeah,
Go ahead.
I believe what his son said, or what they said at the end was that they would wait for the board to make a decision on whether they want to bring in subcontractors to look and start getting estimates for what it would cost for the contractors to do different things to it.
Did they indicate if they felt they could estimate those repairs based upon the square footage, or
No.
they didn't say one way or another?
No.
But I think, to me, based upon the list of repairs, if they could estimate that, I think that would be enough for the board to figure out what might be the potential courses of action. And that may be get more firm fixed quotes. It may be it's not worth doing. Go ahead, Ruth Allen.
I know in talking to Larry, as Jeff was talking about bringing in subcontractors to get the estimates, I didn't get the impression that he was prepared to make that type of an estimate without having them come in. Is that a fair assessment?
That's kind of that's the impression I got.
Yeah.
Well, I know there's going to be a lot of people there, and I know you're not cool and all, but I got something that'll give you an in, all right? You willing to do it? See, I have these leftover pills. It's Oxy from my wisdom teeth, and they're really good to get high on, so if you just spread these around, the party will be fun, and you'll be known as the cool kid.
I don't know.
Take them.
What are you waiting for? Just take it.
No, it's not worth it.
Come on, you'll have...
And he was talking electrical, fire suppression, whether there's a fire hydrant near the building, whether or not it would have to be have a sprinkler system in it, which
Well, it doesn't
buildings
meet the square footage to require it by new construction
Right.
code, whether or not whether or not we would want it done. But
The other question too is, do you want a price option on just starting from scratch and just leveling the whole thing and
Yes.
building it back up? Because that, from what's being put in here, that's pretty much what you're doing, with the exception of just knocking it down. I mean, the entire thing has to be gutted. You jack up the building, put in a new foundation. I mean,
see, I would say the answer is no, for me.
I think my answer is no too, as well.
Because we've got a building that we put on a historic registry, and now we're going to...
Flattening it just looks bad.
Right?
well, I think you're allowed
Well, no,
to say, you're allowed to
but the
say
thing is we got to make an informed decision. So the informed decision may be saying, yes, it's a historic building, but this is the amount of money. You know, we didn't get it to go to town to say what we didn't have it done in time to say, do you guys want to save it? And this is the number. The answer could be, when we get that estimate, that we're going to wait till next town meeting and put it on there again, and this is the answer. This board may decide to go a different direction. It may be tear down, start over. It may be put a for sale sign on it, or it may be wait and go before the voters and ask them what they want to do, and here's a estimate. So, I mean, my goal is just to make progress on this to get to a resolution, whether we're going to fix it or not, you know? So, that's my thoughts. To see if he can estimate the cost or get some help to get those estimates. He may feel comfortable giving us most of it and got to say estimates from 3 or 4 of the areas he doesn't feel he can estimate. I don't feel it needs to be super accurate. I mean, it needs to be within 10 or 15%, but you wouldn't want to say we're going to restore this and not have a contingency factor on this building because of what you might run into. You know, the answer is you go to jack that up and put a foundation in. It's going to be, from what I saw, you can't blast it because it'd be a building unless you move it out of the way and blast it.
Right.
But you're going to be in there taking the ledge out, because that's the reason it's not a full foundation. It's because there's rocks, there's probably, from what I saw, half the size of this area here.
Yeah. Part of it's part of the foundation.
Right.
Yeah.
So there's some, you know, getting to the first floor is some substantial cost.
Yes.
You know, So that's my thoughts. Anyone else?
So before we go into non-public for the next meeting agenda, can we do a discussion on the SRO and whether we need to, or whether the benefit of adding an overtime account to our budget?
Yeah, I don't certainly have a problem adding it to the next meeting, but I have, just off the top of my head, some serious concerns about doing that, just from what I've seen happen in other communities, that I don't want to see happen here.
Well, and right now, we don't pay the SROs hourly. It's done by the town and billed to us, so.
I agree. If she's working 44 hours, we're getting billed for 40, but I see her show up at deliberative. Chances are she's not paid. She's at basketball games. Chances are she's not paid. If she's going to do the job, then I'd like to see her paid. And I think there's a need in some of our activities.
But I am fundamentally opposed to having policing on COVID-19 social distancing.
I also share that sentiment.
When you start pulling people out of the stands and tasing them because they're not socially distanced, it's not happening here.
That's not where I'm going.
I know, but I know it's not where your intent is, but that's my concern, you know?
Put it on for discussion.
Right, I don't have a problem having it for discussion, so. Anything else under public before we go to public participation? Okay.
Do we have a manifest tonight?
So I'll open it up to any public that wants to have any last comments before we go into non-public. Jen, do we have anybody?
I do have, Paul has since left the meeting, but he did share in the chat some information about drones. So I'll have those minutes sent to you.
Okay, that'd be good.
He has left the chat at this time.
Yep, that's good. So at that point, I'll thank everybody for watching and make a motion to go into non-public session under RSA 91A:3, 2A, B, and C, nominations and resignations.
Second.
Any discussion? Not hearing any. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.